which is core to the SABC, is that it gives people free access, in a way, to television services and radio services. So they've got access to information. It's important for a public broadcaster, if we have a population that doesn't get access to information, it's a bit difficult in a democracy. So a lot of people say, no, we must actually charge TV licenses, improve that, in order to gain a lot of money for the SABC. What is your take on that? And most of them say, we should borrow from DSTV in the ways in which it collects money, for DSTV. So what's your view? That's one of the brilliant ideas everyone has been talking about, not assets that we don't know. So what is your view on that?
So my view on TV
That's time up after you have responded. Just respond and then that's it.
So to answer that question in a few minutes without all the facts, I'm just saying my view is I don't think a TV license should be charged. And before I actually would make that final decision, I have no idea what the collection fee is to get to a TV license. So I'm not sure what the bottom line is. So yes, the revenue may look good that we're getting TV licenses, but what is the actual cost of collecting that TV license? And what is it actually benefiting the community of getting that?
Thank you very much. Honorable Matisha.
Thank you, Chair. Madam, apart from, going through your CV, one has checked the work that you have done in the Chamber of Mines, in Teba as well, and what you're doing in Ekurhuleni, okay? And therefore, one would say, it's okay. You will be able to contribute when it comes to the issue that we are faced with of mismanagement of funds there at the SABC. But then we have a problem, or rather, let me say I have a problem around the area of your not having gone through training, studying in communication, in broadcasting, etc., etc. Do you think you'll be able to survive? Yes, financially, you will be able to do something, but then this other area which one believes is a center, I think it may be a problem unless you say something otherwise.
I do not have that experience, I do agree. But the principles of being on the board and running the business, it's very similar. It does not matter which industry you're in. Those basic principles of diversity of opinion, listening to what people have to say, understanding the issues, understanding the strategy, understanding the risk around that strategy. It's a universal language, if I could say. And I mean, I don't have experience on the SABC or that type of business.
So as a sequel to that, one then should draw a conclusion that you don't know or understand, as of now, the role that the board itself has got to play in the running of SABC. It's a question of you being taken through some bit of studying, etc.
No, I don't agree with that comment.
Okay.
You know, a board has a mandate, okay? It has certain things that it has to do. I do not know anything about journalism and that, but that's why we have executive directors. You know, they are the specialists. A board can't have groupthink. You need different people on the board. So I'm assuming that there will be specialists in the communication part of the board. So we can't all have exactly the same skills.
I see. There is a reality at the moment in the country. Well, the point that you have just raised, obviously, needs to be gone into, okay? Now, there is a reality in the country at the moment that, you know, when it comes to the political competitions, the same happens there, where you'll have other people pushing whatever political direction they so want. And that has created problems there. What are you going to do with that?
One should still be true to what the whole purpose, it's a really noble thing that the SABC is doing. Yes, you will have politics, but we need to work as a team, as a board, that we will overcome that and ensure that we stick to what we need and what the stakeholders require. It's a really important role, the SABC Board of Directors. You have influence on millions of people that you need to ensure that you have the right goal, strategy, and ethics to ensure that they are well informed, well educated, and correctly entertained.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Davis.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Ms. Earp, for making yourself available. We certainly need people with financial skills on the SABC board, but you've got no broadcasting experience, as you admitted right at the beginning, and you haven't really demonstrated a real passion for broadcasting so far in this interview. So what motivated you to accept nomination to the board of the SABC in that case?
I've been through a career of commerce. Okay, I have now decided that I am not going to be involved in the private sector anymore. I would like to get more involved in the public sector. So there is a broad range of entities out there that I could get involved. But having a look and having seen what the SABC's potential and what they are doing and what they can do, I don't think there are many state entities that have that key that can unlock the future of South Africa going forward. And that's the reason why I like the SABC in particular.
Thanks. You mentioned in your answer to the previous question from Honourable Madisha that the board needs to do what the stakeholder requires. Can you elaborate on this? Can you tell us who you think the stakeholder is, the shareholder is in this case, and what you mean by doing what they require?
I didn't say the shareholder, I said the stakeholders, okay? So in my mind, the stakeholder or the shareholder is only one of the stakeholders. There are many stakeholders involved that we need to make sure, or the board has to make sure, that they listen to what the stakeholders want. It will be, for example, the employees of SABC. It is the advertisers of SABC. It's the community that SABC gets their message across. It's the regulator. It's the funders. There's many, many stakeholders, and it's not just the shareholder.
Thank you. Being an SABC board member, as we've seen from recent history, requires a great deal of bravery and courage. Have you ever been in a position where you've had to take a stand for a principle that you believed in? And can you tell us about that experience and what the issue was that you took a stand on and how you got through that process? Thank you.
Yes, a lot of companies do have disruptive events, and a disruptive event in particular will tell you the courage of the executive and the board and how they treat and how they deal with a disruptive event. When a disruptive event normally happens, and the experience I've had is everyone wants to just exit the person or the people involved, and that seems to be, or purge, I think is the correct word to use, and that's the easy way out. You know, when there's a disruptive event, it's really important to step back, look at the facts, and make a decision on what you as an individual and what your collective board sees, and have the courage there to say yes or no. So I have been involved in a disruptive event where a fair amount of assets were lost. The company nearly closed down. We had to go to our shareholders, ask for a huge amount of funds. We had to go to the different banks to ensure that they did not withdraw their funds. And again, the whole thing about this was we communicated, we were transparent, and from that, and we made sure that going forward, there were no surprises. All the stakeholders, including the board, etc., knew if there was a challenge, because things are never going to, you can have a disruptive event, doesn't mean that you're never going to have one again, and you have little blips going forward. So it's, for me, that is what was important.
Thank you very much, Honorable Teddy. You started. Honorable Telasha.
No, I'm sorry, Chairperson, I don't have a question. Thank you.
Honorable Kungbela.
Just one question. I assume that you know the challenges of SABC. Probably you can share with us as you understand them. But I'm more curious to check what is your understanding of the concept performance information?
I'm not sure if I understand your question. The challenges of reading the public, I'm not sure if I understand what you say, the concept of performance. I apologize.
Your knowledge of the concept of performance, your understanding of the concept performance information in management.
So again, it's important that the board has this strategy, and it's fine to have a strategy, but if you're not managing it, you're not checking the performance, and you're not implementing that strategy, it doesn't really matter. So a strategy can be done, put in the drawer, and if no one manages it or measures it, it's not going to happen. So the performance depends on what you're trying to implement.
So that's your understanding of performance information?
Yes. So
no, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, sorry.
Sir, are you done? Honorable Kalako.
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered. Yeah, I have no question.
You can donate that to Honorable Laws. The hand was up.
Okay, I have two concerns. Your answer to why you are agreeing to be nominated to serve in the SABC board is that you're tired, or you've been in the private sector for a while, and now you think you can come to the public sector. Am I correct?
Yes.
So why don't you just go to any other public entity? Why the SABC?
Because of the impact it can have on our fellow South Africans. There aren't many other entities that we can have such a broad impact. And for me, that's really, really important.
Well, there's entities that distribute social grants, for instance. They have a lot of impact on our people. Why must we put you in the SABC? You have demonstrated very little understanding of what it does, or less passion about what broadcasting is about. I'm giving you an opportunity to tell us, why shouldn't we recommend you to SASA, for instance, because you want things that have impact on people that are in the public sector. Why the SABC?
Can you switch it off? And that's the last question.
Because SASA is after the event. SABC can influence and improve the education, inform our country, and SASA can't do that. We can get to, the SABC can get to so many people so quickly and get the message across to them and have a huge influence and entertain individuals.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Now, questions were fired, if I can, to you. Now it's your turn to fire back. Well, not necessarily firing back, but just if you have a question to members, it's your opportunity to do that.
I suppose it's not really a question, Honourable Chair, it's more a statement. I suppose whoever this committee recommends as a board of directors, the important thing is this is such an important role to ensure that the different diversity of individuals and knowledge is in the 12 or directors that is appointed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Can we get the next one? That will be Naidu. Can we have the next candidate, please? Welcome to the panel, Mr. Naidu. It will be in order for you to introduce yourself, just to tell us about yourself, and that will be done in 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I invited to join this board for specific reasons. One is, I believe it's both a challenging opportunity to be on the board, but at the same time, it's very exciting to me, because when I look at DTT, for example, it's going to free up a whole lot of spectrum and bandwidth, and that provides a major opportunity for the SABC to expand its channel offerings. And I believe if we utilize those expanded channels, we can fulfill the mandate of the public broadcast more effectively and efficiently. In terms of opportunity to set a model amongst SOEs. I believe we are at the opportune time now with the SABC to use the SABC to set a model which should be emulated by other state public enterprises. For example, we can set a very high ethical standard, a moral standard, and a very tight framework of accountability that focuses very strongly on consequent management. And hopefully other SOEs would follow that model. And the value of that approach, Chair, is that we would now send a very strong signal to the investment community, both externally and internally, that now is the time to invest in this country. And I think the benefits are positive.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu. You are saying you are a professional lawyer.
That's right, Chair.
If we interviewed 10 professional lawyers for the same post, if you like, what is this thing that is distinct to you that will lead us to above all of them recommend you?
Well, I think the distinguishing factor is that one is the length of experience. I mean, I've got a wealth of experience in the area of law, which I would bring to the board. And secondly is an understanding of the legal environment, a broad understanding of the legal environment, not just a narrow understanding. For example, if one looks at the legal framework governing the SABC, it's not just the SABC Act. I mean, you look at the Constitution, the Treasury regulations, the Electronic Environment, Electronic Communications Act, a whole number of other legislation acts that govern this environment. And I believe I've got sufficient experience. I've worked in this space for the last 30 years, and that's my distinguishing quality.
Thank you very much. Honorable Tsedi.
Grace, more often when you are part of the interim board, more often when the interim board and any other person from the SABC comes here, when they talk about the SABC, there's very little that you say about the SABC radio version. If you were to try and change people's mindset that the SABC is not only about this television version, how will you approach that particular aspect, and why do you think it's important?
Well, the SABC has got 18 radio stations, which has a large footprint across the country. If you take the totality of listenership over a month, it's probably in the region of about 30 million listeners now. That's a very large footprint. But the challenge there in a young democracy is that the credibility of your message is critical to keep people informed, which is one of the important elements or deliverables of a public broadcaster. So radio plays a big part. Television is a more popular approach. I mean, it's a much, you need less time, you need less intensity of concentration to watch television. But when it comes to radio, I think we've got a much bigger footprint than television in this country.
I think surely, since you were appointed an interim board member, you might have now come across some good stories in the SABC over and above these negative stories that we hear. Can you share with South Africans what are some of these positive things that are happening in the organization?
Well, there are two key positives I've seen in the last few months. First, the staff itself. I've seen a new approach to the work. In the past few years, I think they felt they were under pressure, they couldn't apply themselves optimally. Right now, I see a new type of staff complement at the SABC, and I think that's great news going forward. Secondly, in terms of the revenue generation of the SABC, I mean, it was a decline at one point, but in the last few months, we've seen an uptick in the license fee collection. To some extent, that might tell you, it's not as scientific, but it might tell you that the general population in this country are beginning to appreciate the changes that are taking place within the SABC. And we're also beginning to see advertisers now coming forward, because with stability and with a value system that is now developing within the SABC, advertisers now want to be on that major platform and footprint that it offers. So we're seeing an uptick in advertising.
Some people are starting to suggest that we need to review the powers and the role of the executive directors in the board. What's your take on that? And do you think is a wise thing to do?
Well, that suggestion is actually contained in the Broadcast Amendment Bill. My take on that entire amendment is that it should not take place, and for the following reasons. One, I think when it comes to the SABC, you need a very rigorous process, as we are doing now. First, it brings forth your best candidates through a very public process, and two, it gives the public confidence in the people that eventually are chosen to run this organization as directors for the next 5 years. Now, if you are going to conflate the executive powers, bearing in mind that the duties of boards are merely oversight mechanisms, board members are part-time, and therefore, as the accounting authority, they're accountable in terms of the Public Finance Management Act, but it's merely an oversight duty. What you need at the SAB is full-time people like a CEO, a CFO, and a CEO to take responsibility for the functioning of that organization and to become accountable in terms of the PFMA.
Time is up.
Not even 10 seconds. Okay. Digital migration, Chris. What does it mean to the SABC? And if you were to advise the minister, because this time around we can't afford not to meet the deadline, what does it mean, and what kind of an advice can you give so that this time around we don't miss it like what happened in the past?
Well, very simply, digital migrations mean one step in the evolution of television and the transmission of data. We were on the analog platform. We are now moving to digital. What it means is that you can move more information on less fiber if you're looking at terrestrial migration. It frees up a whole lot of bandwidth. It frees up spectrum that can be sold to industry to get the economy going in this country, and it can also be utilized by SABC to open up more channels and give a better offering to the public.
Thank you very much. Honorable Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Naidu. I mean, so you still work at Ntuli House as a legal consultant. Well, the Act doesn't say, you know, people who work for political parties can't serve on the SABC board. I think it would have been right for you to resign from that position, because the idea is to get a board that is kind of independent of political parties. So why have you not resigned from that position?
Well, I think that's a very important question, and one could infer from that by working for a political organization and coming onto a board like the SABC, the propensity is that one could use this position to influence, let's say, editorial policy, for example, the space that is given to political parties. But when you look at that inference, you must test the reasonableness of that inference that you've just made, Honourable Member. If you look at my track record on the SABC for the past 3.5 years, I've stood up against some very, very serious decisions taken by ANC ministers. That's the first point. The second point, decisions taken by ANC members of the SABC board. That's the first part. The second part is, well, I would put my reason for wanting to be on the board at this stage to what I call political maturity. It's not about going onto a board to try and score narrow parochial political points, but when you make, at this stage in one's life, when you sit on a board like the SABC, it's about wanting to make a contribution to the public good that serves the public entirely and not any specific interest.
Yeah, I know. I still find it a bit dicey. I mean, we would never, for example, nominate someone from DA head office to serve on the SABC board. We wouldn't think that's right. But I'd like to move on. Which subcommittee do you head up?
At the SABC, I chair the Audit and Risk Committee.
Audit and Risk. So now there was a letter sent to the committee about a security tender. And then I was subsequently sent documents about that tender, so which kind of proves the authenticity of what is said in that email. So there was a tender awarded to Mjayeli Security, but then the board decided to give it to a different company. Why was that?
Well, what happened there is that, firstly, the security tender was being extended for but at least a year and a half, on every 3 months. For some reason, it was being extended in the absence of a board. And it came to a head in the last month or two. And some information was brought to the attention of the chair of the board on that security tender that something could have happened there which influenced the prime contender for that tender. The board looked into it. It looked at the scoring mechanism. It looked at the way the tender was allocated. It sought legal advice from the legal department of the SABC and concluded that with justification, it could then award that tender to the second party that came in because the price differential was very minimal. It's a 5-year tender. So it was a considered process by the board, not an individual, to award it to a different party. And now that's being contested in court, which I think is a good thing. It opens up an objectivity to justify the board's action.
I'm glad it's been dealt with in a judicial process, and then we'll just wait for the outcome of that court case so that the information was made available to us as Parliament, and we are right to ask those questions. But if it's in court, we'll see what happens. And then I think I'll also ask the chairperson the same question. So you were on the board from the previous board for 3 years.
Yes, that's right.
And in those 3 years, a lot of things happened. There was corruption. Hlaudi Motsoeneng, was offered the position of COO permanently. There was endless litigation. I think in those years, the SABC was basically brought to its knees. Now, I appreciate the fact that you spoke out after you left the SABC board. You testified before the SABC inquiry. My question is, in those 3 years, why didn't you publicly speak out against what was happening on that SABC board?
I thought I just gave you an example of various times in that 3 years where I spoke out, and publicly. So I have spoken out in those 3 years. I mean, for example, when the minister appointed Hlaudi Motsoeneng as the COO, I spoke out against that.
Publicly, not on the board.
It was published in the newspapers, in the Sunday newspapers.
I don't recall that, but I'll look into it.
Well, I'm just correcting you.
Kaladas and...
No, I spoke out. If you look at your own DA application, the application that you brought in the Western Cape High Court, you will see that I'm one of the parties that did not support that nomination. So.
But in the board, I mean, did you come to Parliament and say... No, I'm not talking about objecting during board meetings. I mean, when you see something that's patently illegal happening as a lawyer, why didn't you write, for example, to the chairperson of the Committee of Communications and say, here is something happening, it is seriously problematic. If that doesn't help you, you speak out publicly, you inform a journalist, do something. I don't recall you speaking out publicly against what was happening. I'm not talking about objecting in board meetings. I'm talking about publicly standing up and saying, this is illegal, this is wrong. Come and see what's happening at the SABC board. What's happening is really, really bad.
Just hold on there. Members will recall that when yesterday when I raised the public comments, that comment was saying all members of the interim board must not be considered precisely because of that. And it affects all of them. I'm not sure if you did raise this thing because we had one board member yesterday. So it's information that we received through the public comments for this exercise. I just wanted to remind members that there was that information yesterday. Go ahead, Mr. Naidu.
Yeah, just on that question, I've spoken out publicly, and I think the honourable member should, do herself a favour to confirm her own thinking on this matter and go back to the various documentation. But I think another example I could quote is when Honourable Davis came on an oversight visit last year, in the first quarter of last year, and I raised the issue of, he wanted to know, is there any way that they could assist us as Parliament? And I said, yes, there were 3 board members that were illegally removed in this board, and I did that in the presence of the entire Oversight Committee, which included Honourable Davis and the board. So I've spoken out.
That's the response. Honourable Loze, it's now your turn.
Mr. Naidu, are you an ANC deployee in the board?
No, I'm not an ANC deployee. I was recommended by a group of lawyers.
Did you inform any member or leader of the ANC about the recent CEO process, appointment process?
Not to my knowledge. I wasn't really, I formed part of the panel in that process, but I've not spoken to anyone outside the SABC.
Have you spoken to anybody in the ANC about that process? That's the direct question.
I've not spoken to anyone.
Okay. And then can you explain to me what were the charges against you when you were in the boxing board?
It was failure to execute duties. There were some allegations that monies went missing, but in the end, all those charges were dismissed.
By who?
By an independent inquiry.
An independent inquiry? Which body? Which
it was
independent
the
inquiry?
boxing board appointed a presiding officer. It went for about 3 weeks, the entire inquiry. And in the end, the charges were all found not guilty, and the boxing board compensated me.
But you were on a special leave for 12 months, am I right?
I can't remember, but it's about 3 or 4 months, not 12 months.
Yeah, my information says about 8 to 12 months. So if they resolved it in 2 weeks, why were you on special leave for 12 months?
Well,
even 4 months, according to you.
Now, the boxing board had about 3 attempts to try and bring those charges. It first brought a set of charges, and then it withdrew those charges. Then 2 months later, it brought a second set of charges. It withdrew, brought a third set of charges, and that was the delay in the whole process.
Okay, and then second from the last question. So you took a stand in the past board against malfunction and all those things, and the only thing you did was, in this explanation, now speak in public. Why didn't you tell the actual authorities that could have taken action about the things that were happening? It's not just the appointment of Hlaudi. We know you to have spoken publicly at the time at which Hlaudi was appointed, but there were many wrong things that were revealed in the interim board, which happened in that 3-year tenure, which you didn't speak about, but also you didn't tell at least Parliament or anybody about. If you did, please give examples.
Yeah, I think the way one needs to understand how boards work. In the previous board, the permanent board, I spent 3 years there. Now, you deal with matters as is brought to your attention as a non-executive director. If matters are not brought to board, you have no knowledge about it. The different approach that we adopted with the interim board is that we took a view that it'll be business unusual. What we've done is that we, as interim board members...
No, please stick to the past board.
No, we met with the business units. Now, on the past board, we sat and adjudicated on matters that were brought before the board. And
wait, Mr. Kish, I don't want you to get out of this question. It's your opportunity to place on record properly. You said that you spoke. My knowledge is you spoke only on relation to the wrongful appointment of Hlaudi. There were many things that were wrong that happened in the 3-year tenure in which you were in the SABC. And I put it to you, didn't say anything about them, either to the communications committee or to any authority that could have taken action against them. Leave the activities of the interim board, which is fixing the things that have been going on in the past. What did you do if you did something? Because to our knowledge, we don't know that you did anything except to oppose the appointment of Cloud, which is a bit easy, in my view, to oppose.
Well, 1 month after my appointment in 2013, I opposed the multi-choice agreement, and that's in public records of the SABC. I said it was an unlawful agreement and it needed to be set aside. That is 1 month after being appointed. When the three...
So something unlawful happens, you just take a public platform. Isn't it proper to approach a body so that such a thing can be set aside? I think you appreciate why I'm being very pushy on you. Moving forward, we can't just speak. We have to take action to make sure that the responsibilities bestowed on us as members of the board are actually taken seriously. So if you're going to continue just speaking publicly, you won't save the SABC because speaking publicly didn't. So multi-choice agreement is illegal. Again, you speak out. Why didn't you do something that could have stopped it?
Well, what I did is I wrote an opinion for the board. I gave it to the board. What the board did is got a counter opinion to counter what I was saying. Now, in that circumstance, as a board member, what else could I do? That's the question. Remember, I'm operating in a corporate environment at the board. I produce an opinion, a legal opinion, setting out why it's unlawful.
I appreciate that. Final question is, I got it, Chairperson. Yes, final question. Many people would say that's precisely why you shouldn't be in the board. That many of you senior people who have been in this space of communications for some time, things have gone wrong under your watch. Why should we appoint you? Because you are defeated by these things. You are unable to stop them. So why should we put you, why shouldn't we get new blood? Why should we return you? Because you've been in this space in your own explanation for some time and things have gone wrong. Nothing you do saves situations.
No, sure, things have gone wrong because the board was dysfunctional. You know, one must, when you have a board of 9 executive, non-executive directors, and 7 of them go in a particular way and 2 go in another way, you have to respect that outcome. It may not be the right outcome, but you have to respect governance.
Even if it's illegal.
For the record,
even if it's illegal.
And for the record, on every high-level contentious matter on SABC, I stand on record as having opposed those decisions. I was in a minority.
Thank you very much. And permit me to start by thanking Krish for having contributed. When we requested you to serve in the interim board. Thanks for that. Well, of course, there are a number of problems that need to be looked into and resolved so that we then can be able to move forward. So you have done your part. You have indicated that you moved out basically because you could not swallow the kind of situation that permeated the SABC then. But then the problem is, was there no way, Krish, that you could be able to access the information? I know there was a chairperson who was at the center, okay? Was no way, in any way, that you could be able to access this whole thing and then deal with the problem at the meetings of the board. You see, and I'll come back to the next questions, so that it's once, I don't come back again and again, all right? I have very many questions, but then I won't ask them, because with you, we're talking to a person who has been there, who played, you know, one of the major roles during the problem there. So my first point then is, couldn't you do anything at all instead of simply walking out? Particularly because Krish, you are an advocate, okay? That's the first thing. And secondly, is if you were to go back then, how do you then improve the situation? Because we're having momentous challenges there, lots and lots of monies have been taken. Let me not go into that because you know this thing. But then the main problem that we shall have as Parliament is the role that you are playing in a political party, because a question shall be raised to say he is the advisor in this particular political party, and then he must play this role again. Don't you think we're going to have a problem? I'm saying this role, the role I'm referring to, is being at the SABC board, okay, but then at the same time, being in that particular political party, playing a center kind of role as a legal advisor.
You have 1 minute left.
Thank you, Chair. Let's take the last question first. I don't work for the SABC. I'm a professional, I'm a consultant. So when it comes to a relationship between a lawyer and a client, you know, you can have any client you can work for the ANC today, and you can also have a client tomorrow from the PAC. And if you remember, there was a major issue a few weeks ago regarding a particular advocate who was condemned by a political party for taking work from a political party, a particular political party. Now, that is, lawyers work across the board, and if you look at my CV, Honorable Madisha, you'll see I've worked for the ANC, I've done work for the PAC, a ZAPO, a ZASM, I've worked across the board. I mean, that's the way a lawyer works, you know. So the fact that I give legal advice, I don't work at Ntuli House, I give specific legal advice. I mean, I'm not a politician, I don't hold any political office in the ANC, and I have no aspirations of being a politician. So I think one must distinguish that from being a politician and coming from a political party. That's the first point. The second point on your first part of your question is access to documents. We must be careful that the SABC is a national key point. I cannot take documents willy-nilly from a national key point, breach my oath of fiduciary oath to the organization and go and give it to third parties or even to Parliament for that matter.
Thank you very
Parliament
much.
is oversight body. They can obtain it themselves.
Thank you very much. It's unfair for the candidate. No, it's very unfair for the candidate. Only 1 minute for him to respond to questions. It's unfair. Honorable Dolash.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Good afternoon, Mr. Krish, Naidu. I think let me take this opportunity to thank you as a person to having allowed yourself to be put into the interim board and the kind of work that we have managed to do this far from a very unfriendly environment. The SABC looks better than it was before the interim board came in. However, it's a fact that we're part of the then board that was that the Parliament was forced to dissolve. As a lawyer, you might have to understand, we might not understand all the technicalities where sometimes, for instance, as a lay person, I would expect you to blow the whistle when wrong things happen around you being a board member. Can you just take half a minute, just explain to this panel, why is that you are unable to do anything that can be done by me, an ordinary, and just a person, either than you as a member of the board? What is this that you cannot do that can be done by myself? If I can realize that next to me, she's stealing something, next to me, something has been stolen, and I can do everything. But as a board member, you said there are things that you can't do. What are those? Just take us half a minute, please. I'll come back, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Firstly, I mean, I have a fiduciary relationship to the board. I mean, that's governed by law. I cannot do what a person in the street can do in terms of information, dissemination of information. I am bound by the fiduciary framework of the board. I am bound by law not to disclose information that from the board, in other words, minutes and discussions that take place at the board. I can only do that with the permission of the board. So I have, as a board member, all I can do to express my dissatisfaction with a particular decision is to vote against it. But if the majority of board members vote in favor of that, for whatever reason, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, one must respect the outcome of that process. That's what corporate governance and corporate law is all about.
Thank you very much, Mr. Naidu. Mr. Naidu, I understand there's a tiff between yourself and Mr. Ntuli, unfortunately. If you might be appointed to the board with all that is happening between yourself, I don't know whether it's personal or it's because you are a member of interim board, and what he's doing, for instance, today is now public information that he had a press conference and your name was frequently mentioned in a very bad way. My worry is, how would you handle that situation in case you are appointed as a board member? How would you, in avoiding to take the board into disrepute? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think, one must distinguish my duties as a board member. I mean, it's a major undertaking to be on the board, the next permanent board. But I also see a major opportunity to make a contribution. Now, one must look at that against the complaints of somebody who was part of that organization, who was fired through a due process of that organization, and who's got rights to go and appeal and take it to other jurisdictions. Now, if that person chooses to besmirch any board member or an interim board or any institution around the SABC, now, it's not for me to say, look, maybe I should be worried about that. I mean, that person has got the right to do it. But what is important is that I am not responding and creating a sideshow between me and Hlaudi Motsoeneng. I am focused very much on my work on the current interim board. And if appointed to the permanent board, I will focus very strongly on that and not allow myself to be distracted by a person who's bitter, I believe.
Honourable Chairperson, Mr. Naidu would remember there was reluctance from the board, especially the executive, to account to the portfolio committee. One of the reasons was that it's only 3% that they're receiving from government. Therefore, to a large extent, there was an idea that, in fact, they were not supposed to account to the PC. What is your take on that one?
Chair, that's a complete misunderstanding of an accountable SOE to government and to the executive authority. Even if no funds come from government, the SABC was established by government with government funding, and it's accountable to government because it is a public institution. So irrespective of the funding that comes from government into the SABC, it is accountable. And there's good reason for it to be accountable because it carries a public mandate and it has a major influence in the lives of the entire country. So on that basis, it's accountable, it carries a public mandate, and it's that public mandate or that line of accountability is not dependent on the amount of money put in by government into the SABC.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Honorable Kongobele.
I think, good afternoon, Hari Krishani. Am I correct? The first time I read the name. I think in dealing with the questions, Mr. Naidu, I think you have clarified a lot of my questions in a particular way, especially on the conduct of on the practice that governs the behavior of a board member. But There's a question you're not going to run away from, which is going to keep on coming. That 3 years, I commend. I've seen you, with due respect, I've read a number of times about your public objections. That's why, to me, out of hand, I can remember a number of them. But the problem is that 3 years is a long period. It's a period that forces one to ask a question. Looking at how you conducted yourself during that 3 years, if you look back, what is it that going forward, if you become a member of the board, you would do differently? If you appreciate the fact that it's not unreasonable that people are concerned that you were in that 3 years, with all the good things, the major question that needs to be answered, looking back at all the things that happened, what are things that you think you can do differently?
Thank you, Chair. I think, firstly, what is important, not just for what I can do differently, but what can be done differently by boards like the SABC board. I mean, the first weakness I think we need to cure with board is to give proper training to board members. So the kinds of challenges and mistakes we saw happening at the SABC would not happen again. Secondly, I think it's important that you choose the right quality of board members so you don't have these kind of problems. You know, it's very unfortunate that you have boards, and not just the SABC, but quite a few parastatals where they are given a latitude to take certain decisions in breach of governance laws that govern them without any consequences. So what I would do in the board is to ensure that there is strict, consequent management going forward so that these kinds of problems do not rear their heads again.
I move on the basis that you would be having quality board members, but who deliberately are in a state of misdemeanor. Because an assumption that everybody who was deployed that time was poor quality person could hide a lot of things. I've seen situations where qualified people do despicable things. And when you examine them closely, you find that, no, this person is deliberately doing this wrong thing. I'm creating a scenario of you finding yourself in a similar situation, but quality of the people being not the issue, but you're finding yourself immersed in an environment of deliberate demeanor.
Yeah, if it's deliberate demeanors, then the environment is such that there's an opportunity to correct that either through criminal litigation, civil litigation, to remove the problem. What is important, I believe, is to have the will to take those steps.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you very much, Honorable Kalago.
When missed this demeanor, right? Oh, it's off.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chris Naidu. Look, I will get into these most pertinent, controversial issues. But I'm happy that you have clarified this thing of conflict of interest and this thing of working, being a consultant is very good, especially with what is happening in the country now. If you remember, just the example was made and the response of Nadel.
Oh, it is weird, automatic.
So, and the response of Nadel of how the professionals and this profession is treated. Because you can work tomorrow, consult for DA. Consult tomorrow for any, because you have consulted even for private sector here. So I think, well, with EFF, we change. Their lawyers sometimes consult for us. Our lawyers consult for them. They are not our lawyers. In
No,
as far as-
advocates don't. Advocates don't.
As we are clients, we are. But what I want to get to, will you, as you are saying, because what we want here, you have displayed at least this position of being independent, following proper guides according to the Act, according to the Charter, according to all the documents which govern. I want you to actually really guarantee us that if you are in the board, you will pursue that independence irrespective of who is actually the stakeholder, irrespective of who is trying to have influence. Because the board is not only influenced by the ruling party, DA influences the board, EFF influences the board, everybody, because that's a public broadcaster for all of us. So to me, the key is the person which we put there must always keep that position and always keep that credibility of SABC, never to go to where we have taken out from. So that's if you can just, for me, guarantee us for that, on that. Because the other issues that you work there, it's non-issue to me. We have many DA people working in many areas, we don't question them. And they do help state. In fact, this question was asked yesterday by the chair to one candidate here. So that is not the issue. The issue is credibility and independence and integrity. That's the issue here, which of the people who want in the board.
Now you have 1 minute to respond,
Thank you, Chair.
and that
Well,
will be it.
Let me give two quick responses. I think the Honourable Member pointed out to certain qualities which I have, and I will have going forward. That's the first point. If I do anything untoward, I believe that I will be acting out of character, because I've got a long track record that goes back from the 1970s, which is out there in the public space about my credibility, my independence, and my integrity. So I will be acting out of character. But coming back to political influence on the SABC, I thought about this quite carefully, and my view is that we should set up a subcommittee at the SABC to to jealously guard our editorial policy. So if there are attempts by any political party or any individual, those requests should be directed to that subcommittee. So what you're doing is you're institutionalizing any effort to try and effect political influence on the SABC.
Honorable Davis, you are the last.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Naidu. You say that you were not deployed by the ANC. You just said that earlier. You said that it was a group of lawyers that recommended you. But this contradicts what you said in Parliament last year in October, when you told this committee that, and I quote, "I was asked by the ANC to sit on this board." So why are you telling us today that the ANC did not deploy you, but 9 months ago you were saying that the ANC did deploy you?
No, what I said in Parliament was that I was asked by the ANC, an individual put my name forward for the permanent board. I then went to the party that I'm consulting and said, look, I've been nominated by so-and-so to sit on this board. What is your view? And he said, please go and do it. And all we're asking you to do is to try and help rectify and fix that board. That was the only thing I tried to, that the instruction, if you want to call it that came from the ANC. In the 3.5 years that I've been on this board, not once did the ANC tell me on any day, and I work very closely with some of the full-time officials of the ANC, was I ever told to do anything or say anything at the SABC board.
don't you think it was inappropriate to go back to the ANC to ask whether or not you should stay on the board?
Another question of staying on the board, when you've got a client that you're consulting to and a proposition is made that you sit on the board, the first thing you have to establish is that, is there going to be a conflict of interest? Now, the client says there's no conflict of interest because you are serving that board because of your capabilities as a lawyer and your integrity, etc. So it's got nothing to do with us. That was what I meant when I said the ANC said go and serve on that board.
Okay. You said earlier that you stood up to an ANC minister, and that might well be true. Your CV notes that you were an advisor to Derek Hanekom, the former Minister of Tourism. So some people might say that you only did what you did because you were actually serving a specific faction of the ANC, because we know which faction that minister is on, and we know which faction Minister Mutambi is on. Now, the problem is when you're a political deployee, people use a political lens to interpret your actions. And that is the problem with political deployments. How would you respond to that?
You don't have to put me to any microscope or any lens. Judge me by my public record, that's all I'm saying. I mean, I stood up against ANC ministers. I stood up against ANC-dominated boards at the SABC. Now, that's a matter of public record. You know, you don't have to try and put that into a particular which is not entirely true.
You see, perception is very important in public life. And there is a public perception that the SABC is biased towards the governing party. And we've heard candidate after candidate here in the last 2 days saying that the SABC is moving towards a state broadcaster if it isn't a state broadcaster already. Don't you think that this negative perception is fueled by the deployment of people like yourself from the ANC to the board? And don't you think that you yourself will be damaging the public perception of the SABC board by accepting this nomination?
I mean, why you rely on perceptions, Honourable Member, when you got the reality? You know, I mean, I don't understand your logic. Perceptions become reality in the absence of justification or records. You've got a public record of what I've said and what I've stood for while being a member of the SABC board. Now, to try and insinuate that because you provide advice to a political party, I mean, you're actually demeaning my credibility, you know? I mean, I've got a track record of credibility. And I'd like to hold it up and say, this is what I believe in, and if I see something wrong, I will say something about it, which I've done as a board member.
Isn't the simplest thing to do just to resign from your position as a consultant to the ANC? Wouldn't that be just the simplest thing to do? Why won't you do that?
No, it's not the simplest thing to do. It's a form of income for me. That's the first thing. The second thing, I don't see a conflict of interest. That's why I won't resign.
But it's 4 seconds left. Members, I see the hand. I see the hand. We are left with 3 candidates. If you want follow-ups, I will give you. Despite we took a decision that we won't do that. But if members want a second bite, I'll gladly give you, all of you. Already, those are the hands. I think let's go for it. Honorable Doze? Yes, yeah, all of us will do.
Mr. Naidu, 2 questions, and try to be precise, as you have been, in fact. It is a conflict of interest. You are interested in the ANC paying you for the work that you do. The ANC is openly interested in a specific direction of the SABC. Is it in your good conscience ethically correct to toe that line so thin in light of what has happened and the public reputation that now the SABC, enjoys as an ANC thing, just in a precise way?
With respect, Honourable Member, let me explain what a conflict of interest is. If you sit on a particular board and you are in a position to take a decision that influences a particular outcome where you have an interest, that's what a conflict of interest is, you see. Now, it's nice to talk about these concepts, but it's very important to understand what it really means.
Mr. Naidu, you are interested in the ANC paying you. That's why you won't resign. The ANC, which then says go to the board, in your own admission, is interested in certain outcomes. It's open about it. We are interested, the DA is interested, everyone is interested here. You are in an ethical dilemma. Is it not wise for you to attain a distance from the ANC so that we have confidence in your presence in the board?
Honorable Mr. Naidu, your time is up. Honorable Van Dam?
Chair, I think Honorable
Because I will
Dawes
do this. If you take more than this minute I gave you, I will not allow the member, the candidate, to respond.
All right, I'm going to speak very quickly and allow Mr. Naidu to also respond partly to Honorable Ndlozi's question. So now there's been a narrative built that you're just a consultant, you consult for all different political parties, which is not reflected in your CV. In your CV, you say, at present, I am a consultant to the ANC and a legal advisor to the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee. You do not say you're a legal advisor, a freelancer who gives advice to all political parties. You work in the ANC, you give advice to the ANC, so I think that needs to be made very clear.
What I did say with respect, Honourable Member, if you look at my CV, I said in the past when I practiced, I gave advice to a number of organizations, and that's on my CV. Now I'm not practicing anymore, I'm on a non-practicing role. And I just work with one client, which is the ANC. But in the past, when I practiced, I've acted for a whole range of political organizations, and that's what my CV says.
Are you done that side, Honorable Tolashe?
No, Honorable Chairperson, I think I'm satisfied with the way Mr. Naidu has responded. In fact, maybe with time we need to be taken through as a committee on the actual role of the board and understand the laws that governs, because it's like now we are in a committee. Because there's no sin to be a member of the ANC. It's no sin to ANC to suggest that people must go and be part of the board. It's no sin. This is the arrangement of the country. If Mr. Naidu can speak to that, this country has been arranged such that there are different political parties. Whom other people belong to those political parties insofar as the history is concerned. And that cannot be changed overnight. If Mr. Naidu can just speak on that so that you can be on the same page. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I think we must be cautious about creating perceptions and innuendos of political influence when the reality is there for everyone to see. If one has regard to the minutes of the SABC for the last 3.5 years and look at anything that I've said that could, contrary to my character, say that I've gone there for political influence, well, then there's a case to be made. But there's nothing that I've said which one can objectively deduce that here's a person who's come here for a political purpose. Now, the records are there for everyone to see.
Thank you very much. Any other hand?
I think probably I will follow Sister. You see, it will be another story, Mr. Naidu, if you heed the fact that you're advising the ANC. Because that story is not there. The fact that you have disclosed, it makes another story. So all I want to say, the bottom line is, I agree with you, demonstrate to South Africans that you are an independent professional. And I agree with you that you'll be judged on that basis, you'll be dealt with on that basis. There's no more comment I want to make.
You still have something, Honorable Kalako? Yeah, there you are. You wanted it, I gave it to you. That's it. Thank you very much. Mr. Naidu.
Thank you, Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you very much. If you have a question, you can, because we are going to break for dinner now.
Now, I've got no questions. I think I've given a very candid approach. I was not hiding anything from this committee, and when contentious matters
Thank you very
came...
much. You don't have a question.
Okay.
Go well. Now, members, we have three candidates to go. So we are going to break for dinner now, and come back. We'll come back at 6:30. The dinner is here. Right. 6:30 we're back.
Please, Baba, always check with my camera. For 25 people, né?
Good morning, good morning. Oh, yes, you are alive. Yes, 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 yes. Good evening again, members. It means you are still okay. At least you know that it's not in the morning. Huh? Well, can we have the next candidate? Yes.
Chair, before the next candidate comes in, I wonder if we could start earlier tomorrow, because I don't think any of us wants to be sitting here at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. So perhaps we could start earlier tomorrow, say 8 o'clock.
Closing, just wake up, my man. Wake up.
There is a proposal, members.
I want to remind the Honorable Davis and the rest of the members that I said to all of us, let us do this in 2 days.
We would have been here till 2.
It was Honorable Davis who said we are here to work and all of that. Now he's talking about the Friday night. On the basis of a Friday night, we must start early tomorrow morning. I mean, I would have to be convinced better than a Friday night. I mean, and all of you just gullible like that, honorable members. A proposition called Friday night, we must stop working.
Members,
unless you are going
let's call
to the Shisanyama of that Kama honorable person.
Let's call the next.
Then we'll continue interviews even there. So I say we start at 9, as we've been starting, and proceed. I'm registering that, Chairperson.
Yes.
8 o'clock is too early.
We can engage in this discussion after we're done with the candidates. If after all this, we can sit and discuss that.
We might not have time, Chair.
We'll have time.
No, the chair says let's do it.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Dr. Netengwe. Welcome to the panel. What we are going to do in 3 minutes, you'll introduce yourself, you'll summarize your work experience, and thereafter members will ask you questions. Take it as a discussion. It's not a question and answer session. They would like to hear your knowledge about the sector and all of that. So just take 3 minutes to introduce yourself and tell us more about yourself. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Tiziambi Gladys Netengwe, born in a royal family at Chandama village, Hane Chandama, and married by a senior traditional leader, Botobele Netengwe, being the first wife. My education, I did my education through correspondence from JC up to PhD. Honorable members, I'm a teacher by profession. I only told you about my academic qualifications. I obtained my BA degree at the University of Venda in 1985. Then I went to the then University of the North, where I obtained my senior degree, BA Honours in Linguistics, specializing in drama. I came back to Venda, where I did my master's degree on female linguistic etiquette with reference to Movenda woman within the Bavenda speaking community. Then I went back to Limpopo Legislature. It is now Limpopo University, where I did my PhD degree in 2005. Then that is my academic qualifications. As already indicated to you, to your good selves, I spent 5 years in teaching. I was a teacher for 5 years, principal for 30 years, inspector of schools for 3 years. Then I was an associate professor at the University of Pretoria, where I was coordinating indigenous knowledge system in the following institutions. That is University of Pretoria, University of America in Houghton Unit, as well as Gara Heritage. Honorable members, as a dual life, I also did a dual life of an African woman, being educated and still do things that are cultural with the University of America. And then that's how I went so far. As a woman married in traditional affairs and very much passionate in indigenous knowledge system, I wrote a genealogy for Matamela Ramaphosa, our deputy president, from 1600 to 1998. I also wrote a last school of the initiation school for the Bavenda with the National Heritage Council, and also did South African history from 1948 to 1998 with the Freedom Park. And lastly, recently, I wrote about the traditional leadership as well, governance as well as democratic governance. Honorable members, it is worthwhile to mention that I had an opportunity to participate in national TVs as well as radios, as if I was prepared. It was preparing me to be here today. I was on SABC 2 twice, doing special assignment, ANN 7, talking about something that I'll tell you if you want me to tell you, SAFM, where I was doing the dialogue with the African perspective point of view on tattoos with the Europeans and mosaic as well. Honorable members, in a nutshell, I think I've done justice to introduce myself to your good selves. Of course, going forward, I hold a singular view that my appointment to this esteemed board will enable me opportunity to lay down my passion, that is of serving the people of this country with diligence and selflessness. Honorable Chairperson, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Natengwa. I'll now give opportunity to members to engage the candidate. I'll start with Honorable Tsedi.
I'm sure you are aware that the part of the mandate of the SABC is to educate. Maybe just share with the panel, maybe 2 or 3 educational programs that you can think of from the radio side, not from the television side. And what is it that we can learn from some such programs?
In which TV, Honorable? In which radio?
Any radio station, SABC radio station that you can think of.
Oh, thank you very much. There are two, let me mention one thing. The one is for the education. There are programs in the radio wherein teachers, maths teachers were given opportunity to educate learners through the radio. And then sometimes you may find that they also ask questions, pose questions, more especially during this, the exam time. They are always on radio. That interests me a lot. And another program that makes me happy is the religious one. Where women, you know, women are always frustrated. They don't know what to do. They don't know. Sometimes they even get mad because of the frustration they had. But in radio, they talk to them, tell them that they must accept themselves as they are, whether married or unmarried. They must accept themselves and do what is right for their children and for their health. Thank you.
Okay. I forgot to tell you one time that we have 5 minutes to interact. If you can try and be very brief, so that you are able to, it will work in your advantage, so that you can then be able to do justice to the rest of the questions. What is digital migration in your understanding, and what does it mean to the SABC?
Thank you, Honorable. Digital migration is the tool that is used to make popularize the SAB, the radio as well as the TV, and to the poor of the poorest. Because in some areas, the TV and the people cannot view TV or even listen to the radios. But digital migration is the one that is going to assist people. And I understand it is funded by the Department of for the government, as well as donation from other countries. Thank you.
Have you heard of ICASA before? What does it do?
Yes, ICASA regulates the SABC to make sure that they're doing the right thing.
The very last one. Surely, it's not everything bad that happens in the SABC, despite all these things that people always talk about. Can you share with the panel and people of South Africa, what are some of the good things that are happening in the SABC, as far as you know?
The good things are very few. People can view things like the soapies that are there, although there is a contradiction of what is going on, but people can adhere to it. And sometimes they can tell us where the leadership is, but without getting details, without giving us picture of what's going on there. I thank you.
Yeah, just said it. Yeah, thank you very much. Honorable Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Natengwe, for making yourself available to serve on the SABC board. From your CV, I mean, you haven't, you don't have the qualifications required to serve on the SABC board or the experience. Why do you want to serve on the SABC board?
Thank you, Honorable Member. I think, although I have a teaching, I'm a teacher by profession, as indicated, and then there are so many programs in the TV, as well as the community involvement. I'm a community leader. I indicated to you to say that because of time, I couldn't tell you that I'm heading the program of women in the province. I'm the chairperson locally. In my area of husband's area of jurisdiction, we have a program called Royal Women's Forum, where we educate the women on what is expected to them as leaders. What is it that they can do to attract the TV?
Thank you very much. I don't see how that fits into the SABC, but thanks anyway. Do you know Mr. Hlaudi Motsoneng? Do you know him personally? Have you met him?
I know him. I met him once or twice.
Oh yes, so you were part of a ceremony where he was gifted, I believe it was a cow and some other things. Why did your community feel he needed to be given these gifts?
To be honest with you, I was there. We were invited as leadership, and then they asked me to come and teach them or guide them in this knowledge, indigenous knowledge system. Then on our arrival there, I realized that there was a present. In fact, I heard that there is present outside. I didn't want to go because I had this masenga, I was tired. Then some people, just come and see what is outside. Then going outside, I realized that there was a cow and a calf. Then Mr. Mutsanengi, Nemakonde, introduced to the people to say, no, this is the cow that we are giving to the SABC.
What do you think of, I'm sure you've heard the stories about Mr. Mutsanengi's leadership at the SABC. Do you think he did a good job while he was COO at the SABC?
Personally, I cannot say yes, because some of the things, just constitutionally, Broadcasting Act were not followed, and then there are policies that are implied in the SABC, but they were not followed when he was appointed.
What do you understand about the Broadcasting Act? What do you think is, what message do you think it communicates?
The Broadcasting Act communicates with the people that this is an institution where it serves to be the mouth of the government.
So the SABC is the mouth of the government. Is that how you understand the SABC?
Did I say the government? There are so many...
but let's talk about that. I want to talk about that a little bit more. So the SABC, is it there as a state broadcaster or there as a public broadcaster? Is it meant to be the mouth of the government, or what do you understand about the SABC's role?
Sorry, thank you. Let me first explain you said public broadcasting as well as the state. The state is no longer there because it was used in that era, wherein the government controlled everything. It was done by the government and nobody else. But when we come to public, broadcasting, is where it's for the community. It has an independent body. Hence, you called me here to see if I am the possible candidate. Thank you.
Honorable Loze?
I'm still meditating, Chair. Can I come later?
Honorable Madisha?
Very short question. You have served the ANC as a member of the provincial legislature. Okay. How do you reconcile ethically and morally being or having been a political operative, if I were to put it in that way, and office bearer, and serving on what should be a neutral and non-partisan public broadcaster board? Is this not a conflict? Are we not going to have a problem there?
I'm the chairperson of Ethics and Governance, where I serve as a board member. There's no conflict because I'm no longer there. I'm no longer in the legislature, but I learned a lot from legislature. The knowledge that I had in legislature, the knowledge that I'm going to utilize here in the institute, should I be appointed. I was the chairperson of the board, of the roads and transport for 5 years. I gathered knowledge a lot. I could see how can we popularize the thing. I learned about the strategic, I could learn about how to strategize, how to popularize, how to market, and I can market the SABC to move it to the upper level. I thank you.
Thanks. If you could just explain this other point. Do you understand the board of SABC? Do you know what that is? If you do understand, what is it that you are going to do there? How are you going to improve and make sure that things run properly?
Thank you. From the political background, I know that if you are a board member, you have to follow, anybody, you have to follow the law of the country. There are policies which are to be followed. I think if I can be appointed, I can make sure that those policies are followed and that there is a good relationship which don't forgetting about the ethical thing of the management and the board. And as a board member, we will make sure that we don't interfere in the management, because ours is to monitor, being assisted by the CEO. Then we'll take the thing forward to the management by the CEO for implementation, and we'll do the oversight. Thank you.
And this all.
Thank you. Can I, Honorable Davis?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for making yourself available to us. You are a former ANC MPL in the provincial legislature. From your CV, it seems that you are currently a chairperson of the ANC Women's League. Is that correct?
It's not correct, my honorable.
Can you just tell us about your involvement with the ANC Women's League? When you were involved?
Personally, it's long I was a chairperson, maybe 1994, chairperson of the branch. Right now, I was an REC member. Recently, I was a pre-REC member of the ANC. But now, I'm not anyway. Okay. I'm just an ordinary member like yourself.
Okay, so you're an ordinary member of the ANC?
Yes, I'm a member of ANC.
Okay. Do you think that political parties should be represented on the SABC board so that we get a cross-spectrum of different views on the SABC board?
Yeah, partly correct, but I can argue to say, I said I'm an ordinary ANC member. I'm the wife of the judicial leader. My husband accommodates all the political parties. And when the DA sees me, they see their mother. When the EFF see me, they see their mother. I accommodate them. Hence, I've decided that through the knowledge that I have, I must go out to the place where I can help people, because people are suffering outside, because the SABC is not functioning the way how it's supposed to function. I think.
Thank you. As an applicant for the SABC board, I'm sure you've been following very closely what's been happening at the SABC. Do you agree that the former SABC board members Ronnie Lubisi, Hope Zinde, and Rachel Kaladas were removed from the board unlawfully? And if so, what was illegal about their removal from the board?
Sorry, honorable member, there was noise somewhere. I cannot say honorable members can make noise. I couldn't follow your question. Can you repeat it, please?
There were 3 members removed from the SABC board: Ronnie Lubisi, Hope Zinde, and Rachel Kaladas. Do you agree that their removal was illegal? And if so, what was illegal about their removal?
Unfortunately, I was not there in the SABC. But if I was there as a board member, I would say, no, let's sit down and see what is it that these people did. Maybe sometimes, if they are not well acquainted with the things that we are doing, we indoctrinate them, we train them to understand the board issues. But because the problem is that if 2 people are working together, not knowing what they are doing, really is chaos, I think.
I think that's enough from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are you still, Honorable Ndlozi, meditating? Okay. Honorable Machoba. Thank you. Honorable Dolashe.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. Good afternoon, ma'am. If you can just take us through on what happened before we got into this process that you are in now. Do you know what happened in the board that was there and that brought us to what you are doing now, interviewing and shortlisting? Can you tell us that short story?
Honorable Member, thank you for the question. SABC was on a map inside South Africa, even outside South Africa. I was also watching. But I realized that things were not going correctly. Hence, it was dissolved. Because there was issues that were supposed to be handled. But let me tell you the hierarchy of these people. There is a shareholder. There is a board. There is a CEO. There is management. So the shareholder cannot be the management, and the management be the... So it was a mix-up masala. Hence, you've decided to call us to make this, to revive this SABC. I thank you.
Very much. Honorable Gumby. Any questions?
I think I'm covered.
Honorable Kalago.
No question, Ma'am.
I think we are ready to respond to your questions if you have any question to us as the panel.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I'm a traditional woman. I cannot respond to my boss. You know, I was invited to have lunch with you, but I couldn't because I saw you are I took you seriously, and I'm taking you seriously. I cannot ask you. I'm here to receive questions from you, to respond to the question that you can pose to me, not me posing to the honorables. I thank you.
I think members ask questions. Others are covered. I think we end it here. And thanks, just to thank you, Dr. Ntengwe, to take interest in sitting in front of us and interest in being in the SABC board. Obviously, when we finish everything, tomorrow, it's our last day, we'll then follow the process of Parliament, and at the end, from the group of 36 candidates who applied and we shortlisted, will only 12 must be in the board. So we'll have to emerge with that 12. And surely if you are part of the 12, Parliament will inform you. But thanks for coming. We have another chief here, Honorable Kongubele. He's from my royal family as well in the Eastern Cape. But he has been in Johannesburg for more than 50 years. I don't know if he still has roots in the Eastern Cape. So I'm not sure if he's still a chief. But one day when you go to your area, we'll respectfully visit the Royal House. Thank you very much.
That will be my pleasure, and there must be a royal blood, blue blood in the committee. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. As Dr. Ntengwe leaves the room, we'll have to get the next candidate. Bye-bye, Ma. Honorable members, can you settle down your own? Members, you are live. You are live on TV, so just relax and wait for the next candidate. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Gumby. This is the panel that we will be sitting with for the next 45 minutes. You have 3 minutes to tell us about yourself. That will include your short work experience, and maybe why do you think you are the best? That will be very necessary. But also if there are issues of disclosure in line with the Act, please tell us before we get to questions. Your 3 minutes start now. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm Gwanele Gumby, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present myself. I must also first record that we are on the last day of Women's Month. To the ladies and the women in the House, may you please enjoy Women's Month. I'm born in 1976. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and I'm always fostering change in the industries that I've been involved in. Please excuse me. It always happens at the wrong time. I'm sorry about that. I've been involved in various industries: investment management, real estate, marketing and communications, as well as now more predominantly with the market theatre. I'm involved in the arts and culture sector. I've had the privilege of presenting myself to the Portfolio Committee of Arts, which, because of my obligations within the market theatre, I've had to do. When it comes to any disclosures, I don't have any conflicts of interest within the industry which I'm presenting myself now. I have none. I do not foresee any going forward. And I'm an outsider to broadcasting specifically, but I'm an insider when it comes to the media in general, because the arts and culture sector acts within the realm of that. And I've also had broadcasting experience within radio stations where I've been a feature in some commentary on economics and other things that are related. If you ask me what is my view of the SABC as an outsider to the organization, I've never served on it. I don't interact with it. I have been to the SABC recently. I must say, when I went to Radio Park in Auckland Park, I was impressed with their artwork collection. I don't think a lot of people notice that. It's of high level, high value, and it just hangs on the wall. You'd be surprised at the values that are attached to that, which is a good thing, by the way. What's important for me is to present myself and just speak candidly about my thoughts and what I see within the SABC. I think first and foremost, I'm a father of 3 as well. As I've said that, I believe in fathers' rights. I've had a journey in that regard. And the SABC, where it is now, it's an asset that has had a hemorrhage. It's been hammered by this House, being Parliament and Portfolio Committee, for the right reasons and sometimes for the wrong reasons, and I'll get to that. And also, it's an asset that came out of an unfortunate situation, which is apartheid and a mouthpiece for government of the time. And it's an asset that's not been turned around to serve society in its current form, as it should be and ought to be. And I will touch on that. Now, in looking at it, as an entrepreneur, I change things, I improve things. Now, I looked at the SABC and I developed 5 Ps and 1A. And the 5 Ps are really in short summary, because I've got limited time.
Let's do this, because your 3 minutes is, is gone.
I should stop, okay.
I think other issues that you wanted to raise will fit in when members ask questions. I didn't hear where you come from.
Oh, as in I'm born. Okay. I'm born in Durban, ngazalelwa eMlazi. Yes, and I've lived my life throughout the country, and I predominantly do work in Johannesburg, and I keep a home there, and I still keep a home in KwaZulu-Natal. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gumby. Members, Honorable said, can you start?
Mr. Gumby, let me tell you up front, we have 5 minutes to interact. So I'm raising this thing because I will appreciate if you can be very brief and straight to the point so that we're able to do justice. I have about 17 questions for you, but I'll try and see if I can trim them down to about 3 or so, if possible. There's only one chairperson. Mr. Gumby, more often when we talk about the SABC, people always think about the television version of the SABC. If appointed a board member, what is it that you can do to change people's mindset that there's this other version, the radio version, and why do you think it's important?
Thank you for that question, Honorable Member. The SABC, you're right, it's got television, it's got radio. Radio, from the literature of the SABC, and rightly so, it's got about 16 radio stations, and that reach is quite high. And as you would know how our population sparsity, dispensation in this country is organized, some of our members of society still receive their information through radio. So the SABC's role in continuing to invest in its radio system is quite important, that it continues to be a form of information, as its mandate says, education, as also to entertain. So we've got people in urban and rural setups, especially now when we have traffic. Like I was driving from the airport. All we were listening to was radio. We spent an hour on radio. So the radio importance of the SABC cannot be overemphasized, as well as the content that impacts it.
What's your view on the debate which says the powers and the role of the executive directors in the board need to be reviewed? And why do you think it's a good idea to do that?
Okay. I think it's a good thing to continuously review the delegation of authority and the power that is attached to that. It's an ongoing thing. It's part of organizational renewal. That's number one. First of all, you review it if there are errors and mistakes that are done, which means the organization suffers losses or there is a misinterpretation of what the strategy and its imperatives are. That's number one. Number two, I would then also caution on changing something for the sake of change if it is not broken. You know that saying that if it's not broken, don't fix it. There are elements within the SABC, having seen what the public commentary about it is, I think there has to be some form of a review, but that review must not be informed only by what has occurred. It must also be informed what the SABC can be in future.
I'm sure you know that the SABC is just one entity that reports to the Minister of Communications. if you were to be appointed Minister of Communications, first meeting with the SABC board, what are the 2 key things that you think you will tell the SABC board to focus on? 2 critical things. Minister of Communications, Mr. Gumby.
As Minister of Communications, if I were to be appointed to that post, the first thing I will do, I will remind the board of its role, because it's got a legislative acts that it has to work within in terms of boundaries, remind it of its role, and secondly, then remind them of the business model of the SABC, which is quite important. And that does not mean I'll remain an engaged minister as a representative of the shareholder, but not an interfering shareholder.
Let's conclude. The relationship between the SABC and the regulator, ICASA.
Yeah.
What's your take? Is it a good relationship? How best can we improve on that relationship if it's not in a good state of affairs?
I'm not too familiar with the extent of the relationship itself, but I can say this. Because of the legislative relationship that is established by the 2 acts that exist between the 2 parties, I think continuous engagement is important. And I also think where there needs to be mechanisms where there is a failure in understanding each other's roles, where you can resolve it outside what needs to be done as a normal course of business. And those resolution points must be such that they are fast and they have the right members that fulfill those mandates or are part of those committees to resolve and iron out differences. It's important that they continue to work effectively because both institutions have got a mandate to fulfill.
Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Kongubela.
Sakubona Baba Gumby.
Siyaphila Baba kunjani?
Yes, Philile. Imilo.
Honorable Member. Yes.
Like him, I've got 5 minutes with you.
Sure.
If you look at the SABC as we speak, what would you say are 3 priority challenges?
Okay. First priority is that the SABC is an institution that's been battered on all fronts. The staff morale is low. I think that's number 1. And you need people to make that place turn around. That's first. I don't think it starts only at board. It starts from the ground up. The board leads it. 2, I think the Ministry of Communications still has a lot to learn and change itself in how it relates to the SABC. We've had enough evidence to show that people have not acted in the best interest of that entity. So there's that second part, which is the shareholder representative. I think the third element that's important, it would be this oversight of this parliament, where you have early warning signs if something goes wrong and ask the right questions so that you can then test the board into those issues to resolve. So those are the 3 areas I will touch on.
If I were to say, start today, what would be the first 2 areas of immediate focus, and what would you do?
2 areas, I'll go to people. I set the new culture. That's what's very important. And I will also, in setting the new culture, I'll have to remind the people that work for the SABC that for the first time, somebody has to defend them. What I will do, I'll create what is called the territorial integrity of the organization. There are issues of public interest and everything that relates to the mandate, but not of the organization. The organization cannot be, in the way it operates, that it can be attacked in the way that it does. It needs to be protected so that people, at least as professionals, they're able to do their job. That's number 1. Number 2, what is most important, I will invest in the businesses within the SABC that work. I'll start there, because there are assets within the SABC. Take, for instance, the outside broadcast unit. It does very well. Some of the commercial radio stations, they do very well. I will invest in those in order to buy ourselves out of trouble.
There's a chart, board charter, which is prescribed by the Broadcasting Act. in the charter, there's a section, the role of the board. It's got a series of governance imperatives, corporate governance imperatives. If you can name 2, 3 or more, 3 is okay.
Sure. I read the charter. It's okay. It can be improved, I must say, just given that one's had experience. Yeah, it can be improved. I think it shows that there's an element of state in it. Governance has got, is a framework at which to make things go right. And then you've got what is called practice notes to improve things as they emanate, because you are there to guard against bad behavior and promote good behavior. The first thing that I would promote is that the separation of powers continues to be in such a manner that it is robust, it has tension. When I say tension, I mean healthy tension between the executive of the SABC and the board, and between CEO, COO, financial officer. There has to be that healthy tension where each individual that occupies such positions does so within their own right, and there's a level and degree of accountability. That's number one. Number two, the board charter, there's a lot that has happened from the deterioration of the SABC, which can now be built into the new charter, which could be formulated to say, with that charter being in place, there were things that could go wrong. For instance, you find that board members could be involved in some negotiations that can either put the organization at risk to incur losses or even incur a profit, which shouldn't happen in that way. But through a practice note under the governance, within the charter under governance, you can then say, what is the role of the board in the event, for instance, you've got an acting CEO, the CEO that was there is out. What is the response of a board when the shareholder is interfering? You've got practice notes on those things, because this is all these things that we've seen. And a charter, when it's formulated today to work into perpetuity, it will not take some of these incidences into consideration in future. If I use the terminology of government, you'll use government directives in order to improve the charter.
Thank you. Your 5 minutes is gone.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Honorable Van Dam.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I just have questions around your qualifications. I'm just asking so that we have clarity. I don't want to misinterpret what's in front of me. Do you have a degree?
I've got a postgrad in business management, and my degree is incomplete. I did, prior to that, a management advancement program.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I see you've done a lot of certificate courses.
Sure.
Why didn't you finish your degree?
There's a reason that I didn't finish my degree, which I listed there. When I did my degree, it was financial reasons. And by that time, I had to work, and then I just moved forward.
Okay, I see. All right. Thank you for letting me know. Do you have one creative idea about how to improve the SABC's finances?
Yeah. The first thing is, I think the SABC can use a lot of innovation. The buzzword right now within the space the SABC works on is called content. There are a lot of ways the SABC can use content. In fact, it can get hold of free content and commoditize it and sell it. And I think that is one area that the SABC can do. Secondly, it can do that within newer players in the industry, younger people, because younger people are working with content all the time. And they're also always looking for space to which to express themselves. And I think those smaller collaborators with the SABC's big infrastructure, which it can leverage with younger people who are drivers of content and also consumers of content, I think that's one key area the SABC can push itself forward and ahead.
So your idea is for the SABC to find content that it doesn't have to pay for and then turn that into profit?
Yes, that is what I'm saying. There is content that is free. There is content you can commoditize. There is content that you don't have to invest.
Where would they find this free content?
Collaboration through young people. Young people know what they want. For instance, there is the space of, in businesses, there are startups. There are people who want to market their businesses. They do not have the budgets to use the SABC. They are creating ways at how they can then use the internet and social media to then advance their businesses. With the SABC having the same infrastructure, of airtime and otherwise, it can work with those young people, especially in the media space, in trying to create opportunities, which the SABC, with its size, is not able to capitalize on them.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a strange suggestion. I mean,
Sure.
everyone must be paid for, performers also need to be paid for the services that they deliver. So I think it's a bit dicey.
No, we're talking two different things. Performance is something else. We're talking content where somebody collaborates with you and say, I share this content and you bring to me the spectrum or your airtime, for instance. That's the collaboration I'm talking about.
So exposure, they must be paid in exposure.
There's a trade-off. There's a trade-off.
All right, thank you. What do you think of the SABC's current editorial policy?
Yeah, I've seen it. Again, it's an evolving document. I think it can be improved, especially when the integrity issues with some of the content, the SABC, and how it policies its work. And I think there's a lot that can be done. I believe from the arts sector, we have coined very well artistic freedom that is enshrined. And I think the SABC can also, in a way that it can learn from the arts, is to try and have its own independence. But within that, you still have to get the right people first in order to clean out that editorial policy. As it looks now in the complaints that have been mentioned, there's a lot that still can be improved.
What specifically about the editorial policy would you change? If you point me to a specific section or idea that's in the policy that needs to be changed.
I think I will not speak in terms of the policy in the exactness in terms of what it is, but I'll speak to it in this way. For instance, in the area of news, the news have to be fair, they must report what they see, and they must have integrity. There's no doubt about that. Some of the decisions that you would have heard, how the news have been manipulated to fashion an outcome, that's not acceptable. That does not give confidence to what the SABC stands for. Such interference from people who are custodians within, having been given the delegated authority to execute that, I think that is what is wrong. We need to place the right people in the right position to do the right thing. And I think the SABC needs that, and hence I've been mentioning a lot about people. I think whatever we try and intend doing, if we don't have the right people in the right place to do the right thing, we're going to keep running around in circles.
Thank you. Honorable Jose.
Thank you. You said when you started, excuse me, Chairperson, am I fine? Yeah. You said when you started that you have 3 kids and you believe in fathers' rights. What was the relevance of that?
It was part of, am I back on? It was when the chairperson started, says, I should tell you about myself and then about why I'm the right candidate. So I was just talking from that point.
Yeah, but I mean, I want to know, what do you want me to do with that information? Because you said I have 3 kids, and by the way, I believe in fathers' rights.
I think the opportunity to present.
Let me remind you quickly. Okay. You were explaining the importance of SABC towards education.
Okay.
And then you said, by the way, I have 3 kids and I believe in fathers' rights. I want to understand that comment properly.
Okay. It comes from this way. From the Honorable Chair, when I was presenting myself, it's something that I wanted to mention so that it gives the portfolio committee the opportunity to see the person that is before them and get to see what drives them.
So you are not married, but you are taking care of your kids?
I actually have been married.
Okay. Well, I don't know why you were talking about fathers' rights. That's fine. Okay. Artists, it seems to me from the CV, there is an important uniqueness here, which is you seem to have placed a lot of emphasis on the creative arts industry. That maybe is the contribution you are bringing to the board. Tell us a bit more about your work there, if I am correct.
Okay. Based on my CV, I was just trying to bring in the various experiences that I've had, and more so specifically that can relate to the SABC. The work I've done there, I think first and foremost, is to ensure that artistic freedom are respected. From a board chair in the organization that I lead, I do not interfere with artistic decisions. And I'm comfortable with that, and my board is comfortable with that. But we get the right people to then work on the artistic component of our work in a manner that we don't second guess them. Whatever they decide to put on our stages through photo workshops and all other things that are artistic, because we've gotten the right person, the delegation is full and meaningful.
So what are the struggles of artists in relation to the SABC that you think must be the immediate attention of the board, even if you're not in it?
Sure. I think there are two top of mind. One doesn't relate exactly to the SABC, but the first one is that their content is not consumed enough by the SABC. That's the first thing, and it's a valid one. Number two, it's slightly an outside issue to the SABC, but still relevant, is that as a result of the little that is played or consumed, then their royalties do not come through. I know it's a SAMRO issue, that one, but still there's a relatedness to it.
So how would you improve this? You are in the board. What do you do to get more content to be played? Because the big problem with content, I'm told, is the 90% rule, which many people are discarding now. They are saying it destroyed the finances of the SABC. So let me pose my question in this way.
Sure.
Yeah. Wouldn't that lead to the same drama that is claimed in relation to 90% rule, which destroyed the finances of the SABC? What's your attitude towards that?
My attitude is very clear. You need to you need to consume your country's art. There's no doubt about that. But you've got to, in a country like ours, where we've not predominantly done that the right way, you need to phase that in. There is a process at which you go through. As you go through it, you will have a balance of artistic consumption, the finances that support it, and you would know when you push a little bit more, then the laws of diminishing returns starts kicking in, or vice versa, you have to pull back. It cannot be an overnight decision when you say, this is what I'm doing.
Okay, so the final question is, if that is the case, isn't it true that attracting investments in the SABC through corroborations of audiences is a contradiction? Because I don't know whether your work has audience or not. I eat from audiences. I mean, surely I give you platform because your work gives me audiences. So isn't that a contradiction? Because earlier on you were talking about solving financial crisis through collaborating with free products. But the point is audiences.
Sure.
And if something that is put on the platform reduces audiences, then I don't get funding. So how do you resolve that?
Okay, first of all, collaboration is not a swear word. It's in fact the new way of doing business, the new way of the business model.
Be direct, brother. We don't have time.
Yeah.
When people put local content, the claim is audiences go down. So it is a risk to take, in particular, products that are free. For instance, a drama or a particular show, which somewhere people say, we'll give you this content for free to play on SABC at this time. All we want is a platform. A person who runs the SABC will say, but it will take the numbers down, and as a result, I may not get advertisement. How would you resolve, or what will be your attitude to that?
First, I don't come from that point of view.
Keep that question in mind,
Yes.
because your time is up. Just keep that question in mind. Honorable Mandisha.
Let me just
and then you can slot it in when you have a space.
Let me clarify, sir, that the main objective of this interview is to improve the SABC. Okay. Now, the first question I put to you is a point that you have put, your statement that you put here today. You said, or quote unquote, the shareholder is interfering and that contributes to the collapse of SABC. That is what you said, okay? I want you to explain so that we then, on the basis of that, can be able to handle that. And secondly, in your CV, there is a paragraph where, no, about 3 lines, where you say, quote unquote again, you've been, or rather you are active in media and communications, arts and culture, primary health care, commercial, real estate, trade, and investments. Okay. Now, what I wish to know is, how does that, help us in this instance? Remember, you, I believe, now understand precisely that which we want, insofar as the board is concerned. And I will put it to you that some of those particular areas are not that which we say should take us forward as the people who've got to put forward the board of SABC. Would you want to explain that?
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Member. Let me start quickly with the last question, local content. They say it drops audiences. I don't come from that set of belief. There's a lot of local content, if we just migrate a little bit to go to Mzansi Magic, for instance, where it's driven by local content, and the numbers that you are seeing there are quite high. When you program right, local content can be consumed. You cannot just throw anything that is not good enough and expect audiences to grow. Secondly, local content needs to be developed. Audience development is a science of its own. You need to develop audiences. You can't just expect one day then everything is worked out. You develop audiences over time to appreciate the things that are around them as well as the things that are foreign and outside. Coming back to the 2 questions that were raised by the Honourable Madisha. First one is that the shareholder is interfering. That's correct. Those are my words. This is based on the public information that is available to us, including the extensive work that was done by the ad hoc committee and how the questions and the conversations related to that. I'm in support of a shareholder that is engaged. Engagement means you talk to those who you've delegated authority to. In this case, it will be the board. You need to set priorities. You need to set what you need. And there's nothing wrong with that because clear guidelines and reporting channels are quite clear. Here, you've got a shareholder that seems to fashion out an outcome where it's not based on a strategy, it's based on the issues of expediency end of the day. And I think that needs to change, and Parliament is helpful in working that out. It's not so much the issue of the board, but the board can be tested in that in terms of performance. The issue on my CV and the industries that I've touched on, you're asking me how can I help the SABC move forward? Mind you, this is a position for the board. It's not an executive position. The board at best meets 4 or 5 times a year. In this case, the SABC is in quite a bad stage, so they might necessitate that we meet more often. But still, there's no operational levers. So what do I need to do as a board member? First and foremost is to help the organization set the tone, which means in setting the tone is the strategy direction in which the organization should go. And that strategy direction for me is the business model of the SABC. I know what has happened. It's quite good that we know it and we have to make sure that things do not happen. But the model is the following. The things that the SABC does well, we need to isolate them and know what they are. We need to reinvest in them. The items that within the SABC that have not gone right based on past behavior, we need to know why they have not gone right. Some of the businesses may not need to exist in the form that they currently do. We need to consolidate them to other units, or alternatively, give them a caretaker status where we give them more support so that they can then stand on their own.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Honourable Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Gumby, thank you very much for making yourself available to us. I just would like to know on a point of clarity, you've got a postgraduate diploma. But you don't have a degree, so you didn't graduate. How did you get a postgraduate degree without a graduate degree?
There is a program that was run by the University of Natal. It recognized prior learning. It was in the early 2000s, and it took you from management, prior learning, management advancement program. It's well established. It's well known.
Recognition of prior learning.
Yeah, prior learning experience, you go through that program, and in fact, you could finish even an MBA. Yeah, it's well established. You can check it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It was reported in the press a few years ago that you were a close business associate of Sifiso Zulu.
He was a friend of mine, yes.
Who was a confidant of President Zuma. Can you please tell us what the nature of your business relationship was with Mr. Zulu?
He was a friend of mine. He's late now. He was a friend of mine, and I spoke at his funeral when I made those remarks. It was last year, and his unveiling is coming up next month, in September.
Okay. Have you ever had any business links with the president or anybody associated with the president?
No.
Thank you. The removal of Ronnie Lubisi, Rachel Kaladas, and Hope Zinde 2 years ago, do you think it was unlawful? They were SABC board members. Do you think it was unlawful? And if so, why do you think it was unlawful?
I picked up the honorable member, I picked up the headlines. I'm not sure of the legality of it, whether it was lawful or not. But what I do know is that board members can be removed following due process, and I also know that board members can resign. As to the exact nature, there was a lot of conflicting reports. I didn't quite get to the nub of it as to what actually it was. But in any event, you cannot remove board members unlawfully. That's number one. Number two, board members have got the right to stand up and be a board member, and also have a right to say whatever the culture is, and if they don't agree to it, they can resign. So I'm not too sure the exact nature of that matter.
Okay. My final question is, when the Public Protector's report came out on the SABC, which detailed the irregularities around Claudi Motswaneng's appointment, the inflation of his salary, and lots of other findings that were contained in that report, one of the recommendations was that the SABC board remove him, or at least conduct a disciplinary inquiry into the allegations. The Minister of Communications prevented that from happening. What would you have done if you had been on the board at that time to stand up to the Minister and ensure that the Public Protector's report's recommendation was implemented?
I would have studied the report, and I would have then asked if the board wanted to take remedial action on the report, and if not, we implement the report. And if in the event that other board members around me were not in favor of implementing the report as it stood, and not wanting also to take remedial action over the report's findings, I would have then expressed a dissenting voice, which is within the parameters of the Companies Act.
Thanks.
Let's say for a moment you were a board member at the time of the SABC 8.
Okay.
How would you have handled that situation?
I think the SABC handled that poorly, because first and foremost, these are members of its staff. It's a PR nightmare. I believe the SABC should not be in the news. It should be a provider of the news. That's the first thing that is quite important. I think that was handled poorly. And I would go a little bit further, that the SABC 8 were left with no choice but to do the things that they did. And in a way, it made the relationship, both sides, look irreparable, which was unfortunate. But the CEO, the board, and the COO, the board should have intervened on that matter. It should have pulled up its delegated authority on that matter, especially the chair, who was the leader of the board. I expected that person to not allow the situation to deteriorate in the manner that it did. And the fact that it did that, at the end of the day, they are responsible.
Yeah, I was utilizing your minute, Honorable Davis. You left a minute, so I used it. Honorable Machoba, on this matter? Nothing. Honorable Tolasha?
Much. If Mr. Gumby can speak on the issue of the digital migration and the post-digital migration.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I believe the digital migration is delayed and there are commitments to get it back on track. And the commitments have been made. I think one needs to focus on what, to migrate from analog to digital. And I think the SABC can play a leading role in that, especially the board. It could be one of the key areas that the board sees to it that through the ministry, those things are done. And the opportunities that come with the digital migration are a good business model addition or enhancers for the SABC itself in terms of spectrum, in terms of how it can continue to compete in the innovative and digital sector that it now finds itself.
Again, let me utilize this minute. In which areas has Parliament failed in executing or exercising its oversight on SABC?
Yeah,
and how would you have handled the matter if you were in their position?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. First and foremost, I express that sentiment. I think Parliament should not be like government. It should be swift. It should be composed of people that know what they're looking for. When any of the parastatals are finding or find themselves in distress, it should not take Parliament a long time to call those who are responsible for that to account. That's number one. The SABC did not collapse, or should I say did not find itself in trouble last year, December, when the ad hoc committee was doing its work. It's been an eyesore over time. And we've been hearing stories that people are coming and they're not reporting, or when they do report, it's not sufficient enough. So the robustness of Parliament was not sufficient, so it was lacking. So Parliament needs to also look at itself from that regard. Number two, I think Parliament also, when it is faced with things that are beyond its scope, which it would happen from time to time, one can understand these things, I think it needs to have strong technical support that it can source from market so that it can go into the issues as they happen at that time, so that the early warning signs can be utilized so that these parastatals do not draw below a certain level.
Lastly, what is the challenge with SABC acquiring rights to broadcast sport? And if you were a board member, how would you address this challenge? Because we think broadcasting sport is a very important one.
I think the SABC needs to get its hands on most of the content that matters to its mandate. Sport is one of those contents that the SABC needs to broadcast because of its reach and also because of revenue that you derive from showcasing those sporting pieces, and then you get advertisers. The only thing that I would caution about, from what I've heard, just from the media, so to speak, is that the negotiations that go into acquiring those rights, I think that's where the light needs to be shined on more. First of all, you need people who know how to negotiate, and there are people that should negotiate for the SABC, not selling the SABC in the negotiations with third parties. I think that is the crucial part, because you have an organization that no one defends, but everyone takes from it. I think that is important. And lastly, the SABC must always create long-term content guarantees. For instance, if you are working with sport, for instance, you can have a 3-year plan, a 4-year plan, where you buy the rights and you can negotiate better. And in the negotiation of those content and the rights for sport, you can then start seeing what the other parties that sell you the content, what else that you can leverage from them. And you find that over time, there are other levers that you can use to actually bring the price down and trade off on other areas.
Thank you very much, and thanks, Honorable Dolashe, for your minutes. Honorable Kalako.
Thank you, Chair. So for me, it's just to, I've heard you have mentioned some of the acts and some of the internal documents and policy documents that govern the SABC. Amongst them, especially because that was a heated discussion even during the time of the inquiry, between Broadcasting Act, Companies Act, and Companies Act, including that memorandum of incorporation, which one takes precedence? How do you solve that problem which was there?
Sure. Thank you, Honourable Member. I come from the space of business and commerce. And I've had the privilege of also serving on the IOD 10 years ago. So governance is important and I understand it. For me, the Companies Act comes first because it is the guideline. This is an organization. And then the specific acts that relate to broadcasting then are industry specific. You need to use those. Where the acts are in conflict, then you can take an opinion and see which one takes precedent over the other, or take a legal opinion on the issue. But in most instances, the Companies Act guides the conduct of directors, guides the conduct at which those who are office bearers must handle themselves in going forward.
What is your position on upward referral as outlined in the SABC editorial policy?
I remember reading that. I've forgotten it. I'm sorry. I've just gone blank.
Your opinion, your position on that.
I'm sorry.
Whilst you are still there. Are you familiar with one of the important documents there, which also guides operation, functions, powers between shareholder and the board and the executive? The delegation of authority framework, what is entailed?
There's the shareholders compact that gets signed, I think, between minister and the board, and then the delegation of authority. Right now, all the things that govern the SABC as they stand, they seem inadequate considering what has happened. Now, there are two possibilities without trying to, by trying to avoid over-legislation. I would use the word behavioral as opposed to legislation. Let's assume that legislation is enough, but the behavior of the people that are placed in the positions of power and influence to execute on these things, I think they've absconded in their duties. I think that is where the main problem is. The documentation and the authorities and the delegations and the acts, whilst at some instances there are conflicts, the conflicts are not such that the organization can find itself in the place that it does. I think it's a people issue. And when I say it's a people issue, I mean a people issue at the SABC. I think it's a people issue at the ministry. I think it's a people issue even to those political parties that have influence in the SABC.
If you are successful as a member, appointed as a member of the board, what things do you think needs in all this, including we talked about the Broadcasting Amendment Bill, which is before us, but in others, is there something which you think needs, whether you consider memorandum of incorporation, the delegation of authority, editorial policy, the board charter, which if you look at them, do you think there's a need for strengthening of those?
I would say there is a need, but I wouldn't start there first. I would start at placing the right people in the right positions to do the right thing. And thereafter, there are policy conflicts within the SABC, for instance, where I think those need to be pulled together. You would know that to change policy takes a bit longer. It may even outdate, post-date the functions of the board. But you start working with what you have. And with what you have seen that the way and the manner that the Ministry of Communication does sometimes work with the SABC in the recent past can be counterproductive. And I think that needs fixing. And I don't think that's a function of the board. It's far above the pay grade of the board. But there is direction that the board can give in that regard. And I think there are things that need to happen slightly before the board is appointed or above level of the board, at this level and at cabinet level or National Assembly level.
I can donate 2 minutes to you, Honorable Laws, my 2 minutes.
Yes, it's good to give the candidate an opportunity to properly make us understand where he stands. You say the Companies Act takes precedence over the Broadcasting Act in your answer to Honorable Kolago's answer. Do you remember that you said so?
Yes, I want to repeat it, please.
No, you don't have to. I mean, I want to ask a new question.
Okay.
So, Minister Faith Mutambi removed the 3 members of the board. You know, you were asked that question earlier, and using the Companies Act. So there was such a debate, and there was an unequivocal agreement that the Broadcasting Act is above the Companies Act.
Sure.
I just want to get a sense, why with the Broadcasting Act, you're obviously wrong that the Companies Act comes above, so the Broadcasting Act comes above. But do you have any idea why the Broadcasting Act has to be above the Companies Act?
Yeah, let me correct what I said. I said I come from business. The Companies Act is the guiding of the governance, but specifically Broadcasting Act is important. Where there's a policy conflict, one needs to take a legal opinion on it to see which one takes precedence.
Do you know why the Broadcasting Act is above the... Yeah, give us that. Be specific.
The Broadcasting Act is the one that regulates the SABC. It's sector-specific. It's the one that is governed for the SABC. So that is why that piece of legislation takes precedent. But it does not exclude the Companies Act in some of the key elements that it has and that are good.
It's still a vague answer. You're not redeeming yourself. Final question. What was wrong with the multi-choice deal?
Just recap the deal.
The multi-choice deal, SABC, do you know anything about it?
I just heard the noise, but just recap the essence of it.
Which noise?
About that, there was a deal with multi-choice where the multi-choice paid less than what they were supposed to pay. What is the exact nature of the multi-choice deal? Please clarify for me.
No, I don't answer questions.
Okay. Okay.
You're the one who wants to be in the board, not me.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're done, members. If Mr. Gumby, you have any question to us, you are free to do so, sir. You are free to do so.
Okay. In fact,
if you don't have,
I don't have.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Members, please, Temungos, you are creating chaos here. Honorable Davis, we're still working. The meeting is still on. Otherwise, you won't get my minutes if you are not sitting down. No, I'm still addressing the candidate. Mr. Gumby, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are happy that you spend time to make your contribution. All we can say is to say thank you very much and go well. Why are you Akanambuzu, yes.
Chair.
Can we get the next candidate?
Comfort break. Comfort break.
That's the last candidate. You won't get my 2 minutes. Yeah. Oh, no, it's okay. You can go. It's Michael Bauer. Only one now. And then we're done. Okay. You get. I hope you're done, Mr. Ngoma. Thank you very much, sir. Welcome to the interview. This is the panel of community members, not community, committee members, portfolio committee on communication. Please just introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and the reasons why you think we must appoint you as a board member of SABC. That will be done, that you will do in 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Good evening. My name is Michael Bauer. I'm 39 years old. I live in Cape Town. I'm married with 2 children. My day job is I'm the managing director of a property company. Why you should appoint me, or why should you consider me? Well, I'm very good at what I do. I'm also a taxpayer, which you will understand. There's obviously certain reasons why I think I can contribute here. What else could I say? I think
that's fine.
Sums it up.
Just tell us a bit on your work experience. Where? Yeah. Yes. Who are you? Where did you work, and all of that?
Sorry. As I said, I have 14 years experience, executive experience as a managing director of a national property company. I also serve on 6 boards as non-executive director. That's mainly on non-profit organizations. So the longest serving position I have there is for about 10 years already, and the others are between 5 and 4 years.
Thank you very much, Honorable Davis. Questions?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm going to need some guidance from the Secretariat on this question. I don't think it's a question necessarily to Mr. Bauer, but thank you very much for being here. On your CV, it says that you are a non-South African citizen and that you are a permanent resident.
That is correct.
Chairperson, according to the Broadcasting Act, it says that any person will not qualify to be appointed to the board if such a person is not a citizen of and not permanently resident in the Republic. So my reading of the Act says that you need to be a citizen who lives here permanently. So I'm not sure if the vetting process was undertaken thoroughly in this case, because Mr. Bauer does not seem to be a citizen of South Africa.
Can you respond to that?
Yeah, I can. That was disclosed on my CV, where it quite clearly said I'm a German citizen. I have permanent residency, and I quoted my ID number on it.
Under disqualification, a person I've heard that before. Under disqualification, a person will not qualify to be appointed to the board if such a person is not a citizen of and not permanently resident in the Republic. That's A of 16. If the person is not a citizen of and not permanently resident in the Republic. Interpret this clause. Are you a citizen?
No, I'm not. I'm permanent resident.
There you are, members. Do you want to proceed, Honorable Davis? Because you asked a question.
Chair, I just think we need some guidance from the Secretariat as to what to do in this case, because obviously the process has been conducted and the vetting has been done by the Secretariat. So I think we should get their advice on whether or not to proceed.
You wanted to say something, Honorable Van Dam? I'm coming.
Say, because Mr. Bauer is here, can we just interview him and then let the Secretariat seek legal opinion if they must? But Mr. Bauer is here, and I think let's interview him.
Okay, Honorable Tsedi.
Honorable Chair, I think we have invited Mr. Bauer to the interviews. I think I concur with the view which says let's proceed with the interviews, because already here I'm trying to interpret it in the light of what the CV says, South African permanent residents with the ID. So obviously we'll need legal opinion on this particular matter, but that does not stop us from proceeding with the interviews as the candidate is here. We have invited him already.
Honorable Tolasha.
Chair, my difficulty is the definition of who must be interviewed. I understand the availability and everything else, but you start to identify correctly who should be interviewed. Let's resolve that matter and don't bring in the matter of him being here, because he might be here, but if he's not the right person, he must not be interviewed, because we'll be creating an expectation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's why we must discuss this matter. Honorable Ndoze.
Chairperson, there's no matter to discuss. The law is clear. He's a permanent resident, and therefore he's here. We can't delete. There's no legal opinion needed on that. There's no other thing. He is a permanent resident. Then we proceed, do our thing. We'll decide on our own after he has left on the basis of but we can't say, let's stop here and get an opinion on the definition of a permanent resident. A legal opinion, it's wrong. He's a permanent resident, he meets the requirement in that relation, let's check everything else. But on those bases alone, I would say let's proceed and stop this thing of saying legal opinion or what. I'm persuading members. The candidate is a permanent resident. Let's proceed.
Honorable Kungubela.
Whatever the committee decides, I will respect. But I want to put this point. On legalities, once there's an inquiring mind, that inquiry needs to be dealt with. Because I align myself with Sister that there's a difference. There are two things here. He is interviewable tomorrow once the matter is clarified. Once the matter is clarified, he is interviewable. In other words, you are able to hit, Chair, you are able to, we are able to hit here two birds with one stone just by being cautious. Being cautious means you don't interview him to create expectation you might find you are not going to meet. But if it is clarified, tomorrow then you interview him, then he's got the opportunity. But if you interview him today, you would have actually created solid ground for those expectations.
You are part of this committee, of this panel, so you are putting across your views. Honorable Kalako? So there is a matter to discuss.
Chair, there is a matter to discuss. Honorable Ndlozi is wrong to say there's no matter. No, Chair, I was saying because the act there does not, it says you must be, can you read again then?
Yes, it's important.
It's important. Citizen of.
Be appointed to the board if such a person is not a citizen of and not permanently resident in the Republic. Image, Honorable Kalako?
Yeah, Chair, that's where I'm saying that's where we need assistance. Because he is not a citizen, he is a permanent resident. So it needs, because I don't want us, in South Africa we take things easy, especially this parliament. We'll create a precedence where somebody thinks, yeah, I can go in South Africa, and as long as I have a permanent residence, I qualify for everything which South Africans enjoy. I think that is written on purpose. It's written in that manner on purpose. So let's seek a legal mind to actually legal opinion.
Thank you. I think the reason why this needs legal clarification, citizenship is primary there. And it doesn't say citizen or resident. It must be a citizen and it must be a citizen. It doesn't say or. If it was saying citizen or resident, it says citizen. So all I'm saying, the very way it is articulated dictates that let's be legally advised on it.
Okay, we hear you. That is why I didn't allow you to go out, Mr. Bao. Because we must be clear on what we are doing. We can't go to this exercise without clarifying our minds. And we can't do it here and now. Indeed, we need a legal advice on the matter. In fact, we should have done that before today. We should have done that before today so that as he comes here, we are clear on what we must do. Now, the question is, are you able, before we do anything, are we able to get you, because you are in Cape Town? Tomorrow we're continuing with interviews. Are we able to have you tomorrow? Or are we able to, because I don't think we should finish the interviews if legal advice says, no, he has a right. must squeeze him tomorrow. But if not, we'll then communicate with him. Are you ready to wait?
I'm okay with that.
Are you happy with that? Thank you very much. You can be excused. Sorry about it. You'll definitely get a call tomorrow. Thanks.
Chairperson.
Yeah, we can now. Honorable Dozie?
No, there is actually, I wanted to, section of the Act here that talks about disqualifications. I don't know if that's what you were reading. 5 subsection
Am I not reading
A.
the correct one? It's
5 subsection A.
Section.
A person may not be appointed as a member if he or she is not a South African citizen and ordinarily resident in the Republic. So even if you are a citizen, but you don't reside here, you can't be in the board. So
are we reading the same act? Are we reading Broadcasting Act?
No, so according to my reading, can I last clarify?
Okay.
I'm not comfortable in us calling a person, and then start dilly-dallying about the qualifications. We could have done the interview, and then always, all the time, we do the checks after. It's not proper. Everybody knows, after we debate amongst ourselves, because these people of parliament does what it's called a screening process. So I think we could have done it that way. That is why I was disagreeing.
Okay.
But ordinarily, the reality is the guy, he's not going to be able to come back. Because if he's not a citizen, he cannot be in the SABC board. This act actually, in as far as this provision is concerned, it says you must not just be a citizen, you must even be resident here. So you can't be a citizen and being in Australia, you hear the SABC board interviews, and then you come and you want to sit in the SABC board. That is as far as I'm concerned about this clause. But I want to say there was a different way of dealing with it, because anyway, we screen our candidates. That's my thing.
All right. Honorable Davis?
Thank you, Chair. I think it was very unfortunate. I just want to check, I think we agreed in the shortlisting process that the Secretariat would screen all of the candidates before we interviewed them. So we didn't want to screen all 363 on the long list, because that would have taken too long, but I think we agreed that once we whittled it down to 36, they would all be screened before they got here. And it's not just for citizenship, it's obviously for their qualifications, and I remember they mentioned the MIE, the company that we contract out to, also screened for their previous convictions and whether or not they're unrehabilitated insolvents and that kind of thing. So can I just check, have we done the requisite screening for this process?
Yeah, maybe is there, the problem, it may be the results not coming quite in time, but we agree that we proceed with the process whilst screening and qualification check is running. So we spoke of a 2 weeks concurrent this thing. So that process is continuing, but maybe we should have prioritized people like this one. But that process is continuing. And we agreed when we presented, that when we received the presentation, we agreed it will run concurrently for a period of 2 weeks, which is last week and this week. That's what we agreed upon. Yes, sir.
Honorable Chair, I think let's agree on the route that we are about to conclude on. But I want to caution the committee, because I don't want a situation where
members, can we listen to one person on the floor.
I want to caution the committee because I don't want a person who will provide us with a legal opinion which has not been thoroughly researched because there is no time tomorrow for us to end up interviewing or not interviewing. So all I'm saying is that we might end up in a situation.
Chair, let's cross the bridge when we get there. We can't determine whether the legal opinion will come and say what once we have not embarked into that process. We are creating more problems for ourselves, Chairperson, unnecessarily.
Can I finish?
I'm talking because I think Honorable Ted is out of order.
Can I'm not saying we must not proceed.
Can you switch off your mic? Members, we deliberated on this matter. It was clear that the majority of members here say, let's hear the legal advice on this matter. That's what I observed when I was when chairing here. And on those bases, I ruled. But it's very clear that you can't, before you get an advice and determine that exactly what we are saying, Honorable said. Because we don't know what the legal advice by 9 o'clock tomorrow, what will it be? And please, let's not pursue this matter beyond this point, because it's going to create more problems. Now, we agreed that we'll meet, no, we can't meet 8 o'clock tomorrow. We can't. We agreed that we'll meet 30 minutes after the session, and it's even earlier than we anticipated. We can do it now. We can quickly do it because, I mean, it's not even 9 o'clock, so that by 9 o'clock we're out of this place. Tomorrow we won't have time, members, I assure you. We won't be here at 8, we'll be here at 9, there is nothing we'll do. Honorable Ntuli?
Yes, Chairperson, indeed that's the truth. I think that we are done for today. I think that we have a very long day tomorrow, and the only point in the agenda now, Honorable Chairperson, should be to close the meeting. Thank you very much.
I'll hear from, that's what you agreed, that we'll meet 30 minutes after for 30 minutes after the meeting. Honorable Davis?
Thanks, Chair. I just want to seek clarity. What exactly do we need to discuss now for 30 minutes?
Very tired. So there is no need to meet 30 minutes after. It's here, it's in the agenda here. There is no need, so that even tomorrow we don't go there.
If we're meeting for deliberations, can we deliberate on Monday, once we've interviewed everyone? And then we have time to ruminate on the candidates, and then on Monday we can talk.
We deliberate on Monday after we're done with the interviews. Honorable Kalago?
Can we, Chair, order, Chair, can we deliberate not on Monday, any day after Monday?
Yes, I agree. I agree. Any day after Monday, because on Monday we're working elsewhere. Not on Monday.
No, members, you have a program. I equal a program that we endorsed. Monday we have a. We are deliberating on this what we are doing now, according to the program. Wait. Monday, we are supposed to deliberate on this. If you want, change it, because it's your program, it's not mine. Honorable Dos.
Thank you, Chairperson. There was indeed a proposal by Honorable Kalako that let us deliberate on Tuesday. I would like to support that proposal because even this Monday we couldn't meet. A lot of us have party the whole week. Only Monday is set out for party work outside of Parliament caucuses. And it will be difficult for some of us to be available. And as it is, you know, the program spearheaded by the brilliant Honorable Davis keeps us here until Friday night, which means we'll be leaving Cape Town in the morning of Saturday, many of us who are not from Cape Town. Brilliantly spearheaded by the Honorable Davis and seconded very strongly by the Honorable Van Dam. And therefore, having conceded to their brilliant suggestions about working until Friday night at 9 in the evening, asking them consistently, do we not have a life as young people? They consistently said to us that no, we are here to work, and we considered. No, but I'm on the platform.
Wait, he's speaking. Honorable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson, for your protection. We said consistently, why would we be here until Friday at 9? Honorable Van Dam, do you not have a life? No, we must be here, and that was their brilliant persuasion. And Chairperson, we considered. Indeed, we are here. We are going to be here tomorrow until 9 in the evening. We can't be diverted because now honorable members feel that they now have a life on Friday night. All of a sudden, they now have a life on Friday night.
Okay.
So my proposal, concretely as I conclude, two matters. One, Tuesday.
Yes.
Let us deliberate on Tuesday. And I want to do the second thing, and that is what we must do by Tuesday when we arrive, which will help us greatly in those deliberations, Honorable Chairperson. I anticipate that they will take a very long time. Remember that we said we're going to meet again on Wednesday to hold the minister accountable in relation to MDDA.
Yes.
So what will help us on Tuesday so that, you know, we cut to the chase is the screening report. If the Honorable Chairperson can put pressure about all these 36 candidates, criminal records, and all those things, so that on Tuesday, before we even go any further, we get that report, which maybe will help us to eliminate people moving forward. So in summary, we're meeting until tomorrow evening, and then we meet again on Tuesday with the screening report hopefully available. Thank you very much.
Is there a contrary view that we meet on Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to remind the good Dr. Ndlozi that we have a program that we all agreed to. He wanted to do this in 2 days. We said 4 days so that we don't sit here late into the evening, and we give each candidate good opportunity to come and be interviewed. He insisted on a short program, so it's his fault to be here on a Friday evening. Actually, so we all agreed to meet on Monday. We've all made arrangements for the week ahead. I'm not now going to change my schedule again because Honorable Ndlozi can't be here on a Monday. We agreed on a program, and we must meet on Monday.
Honorable Davis?
Chair, I just want to add to that. I think we've scheduled MDDA interviews for Tuesday. So I don't see how we could deliberate on the SABC board and conduct the MDDA interviews on the same day.
If you can listen so that we can solve this thing. The program is clear. Monday, we're supposed to deliberate on this. Other members are saying, no. Let's do it on Tuesday. Tuesday, it's interviews, MDDA. And when do we do it on Tuesday? Come with proposals. Do we agree that we don't meet on Tuesday? On Monday, I'm sorry? No, there is a point there. No, don't say we agree. Say you agree with the program that says Monday.
We agreed as a committee to a program.
No, the No, the committee adopts a program and can change the program. Members, members, let me do this because there are many hands. Members, we are not meeting on Tuesday, on Monday.
Okay.
We are meeting on Tuesday, deal with interviews, and after interviews, we deliberate on this matter. Mr. Kungbel.
No, Chair, sorry.
Yes.
I must respect your ruling, but there's a principle that we must put in place. As this committee, if there are factors that make us put a program in a particular way, we must learn to respect our decisions. Because I must tell you, I know how we ended up saying we're meeting on Monday because of the tightness and the package of our work. And if it is easy to change programs of that nature, integrity of our plans is going to be very weak in our reputation. Yes. I'm saying I accept this decision, but I think it must be the last time when we, after serious consideration, we suddenly, because we feel tired, we say we want to go. I'm saying I respect it, but that principle is very important.
Chairperson, let's take note to the concerns of Honorable Kungubel. However, let's agree that we'll meet on Tuesday, because there's nothing else that is new that we're going to hear now. And I also propose, I agree with the principle and everything else, but there are factors that are forcing us to meet only on Tuesday now, and you have ruled on this matter. Can I propose closer, Honorable Chairperson?
Chairperson, so as it is, we have rushed this thing. We had 363 CVs. We shortlisted, and we shortlisted not in a very great manner because there was not enough time to shortlist properly. Now we have set aside Monday 10 to 1 for deliberations. On Tuesday, we have a meeting from 9 to 9 from MDDA interviews. Please tell me, when will we do the deliberation if we have interviews from 9 to 9? So after 9, we must sit here until midnight deliberating. Why must we force everything into one day when we've got time? We said Monday. Everyone should have cancelled what they had on Monday so we can do justice to this interview process and not rush it once again. I don't want to sit here on Tuesday after 9 to deliberate about SABC candidates when I've set aside Monday because I knew there was a program put in front of me, and because there was a program, I made the necessary arrangements. Now, because members are tired and they'd rather just rush everything on Tuesday, everyone must just change their program when we'd already agreed on a program. It's not fair.
Yeah, no, it's not fair, but the decision is that we are not meeting on Monday. We'll meet on Tuesday. You want to prolong it, Honorable Lucy?
No, Chairperson, we raise hands. Chairperson, I don't think it's correct, man, to persuade us from a selfish interest. So I'm going to deconstruct the entire individualistic interests that have been put. There is a logic here that the Honorable Van Dam is presenting. What she is saying is, and I don't know, let us apply our minds. Will we be able to delve into interviews about MDDA, ICASA, start interviewing candidates, and then hope that we will deliberate about SABC later? I think there is a process question there. That's the first logic. We have to avoid procedurally. Those two things are too common. We might mix candidates, we might not apply ourselves properly. Obviously, had we done it in 2 days, we'd be deliberating tomorrow, but we didn't. My request is, perhaps, Chairperson, we've got two options here. The first one is we meet on Monday as we said we will. Or if we are meeting on Tuesday to deliberate on the outcomes of this board interviews, we can't have ICASA interviews at the same time. So we move the ICASA interviews. I mean MDDA. That will be my, that's too dangerous to mix the two deliberations. I'm appealing to the chairperson that let's review that. It won't work. If on Tuesday we are sitting for interviews for a different body, MDDA, it will be a bit of a procedural stress to then say, after we had all the interviews of the MDDA, we go back to SABC. The facts will be different and all of that. Would have added more to the deliberations. So I think, not because Honorable Van Dam has scheduled, she shifted or what, it just makes sense from a procedural point of view. Either we meet on Monday to finish our SABC talks, get the board, or we rearrange the entire program. Move the MDDA interviews to Wednesday and all of that. But I think it will do an injustice to South Africans to rob the process or cheat it.
Now we are reopening the thing. Honorable Tsedi.
Honorable Chair, we can't run a meeting like this. You have given us a ruling that we are not meeting on Monday. And there was a reason why we had to agree to that kind of a proposal. We are likely to finish tomorrow around this time. Weekend, some of us have got other political engagements. We need to have time to reflect on all these candidates on Monday as a working day, as a person. We are done tomorrow around this time. When do I get time to reflect on the 36 candidates that will have? No. I have my other political engagements that I'm doing. So I'm saying, let's allow individual members to utilize Monday to reflect on the whole impression, and we'll meet on Tuesday. And already there was a ruling.
I ruled on the basis of majority view. I ruled on the basis of majority view. And I really don't think we must waste time, because we'll come here and members are not here on Monday. What do we do? So we'll meet on Tuesday, interviews, unfortunately, MDDA, and we'll come back to deal with SABC deliberations. There is nothing else we can do.
Chairperson, that's dangerous. Comrades.
You know,
Naidu.
I like consistency, Honorable,
Okay.
because we started this thing, and we started this thing that we can't because of a number of reasons. We must change our program. We agreed, I ruled that we must change our program. And the majority says we must change it. And I ruled on those bases.
The meeting adjourned.
The meeting is adjourned, yeah.
So Shuti is on the last day of the both MDDA